Hey guys, tonight we begin in the hush just before memory, the soft moment between breath and dream. You find yourself under the dense shade of a fig tree, in a quiet courtyard somewhere you've never been and somehow know. The roof is clay minus styled, sun minus baked and cracked with time, and it holds the stillness of stories that have decided to rest, but not vanish. The air is thick with the scent of ash and cola nut, and in the center of the courtyard, just where rain might gather, sits a single Calabash bowl. Its mouth is open to the sky. The Calabash isn't just a bowl, it is a threshold. In Yoruba cosmology, it's said that Calabash bowls are not only for food or water, but for holding conversations with spirits. When the bowl is placed outside during twilight hours, with nothing but silence and soft intention, the voices of those who have passed may settle inside it like mist. You won't hear them directly, not in words, but in sensation. A shift in temperature. A breeze where none was. A memory that doesn't belong to you. You kneel beside it. Your hands hover over the rim. Not to touch, but to acknowledge. This is how the conversation begins. You'll probably forget this lifetime anyway. Maybe not all at once. Maybe in layers. But memory has a way of tucking itself beneath other names, other faces. And still, your soul remembers what it sowed, what it's whispered, what it once offered under the moon's long gaze. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while we begin to drift together, I'd love if you commented your local time and your mood tonight. Are you wide awake? Already drowsy? Somewhere in between? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit back against the worn stones of the courtyard, letting the night settle into your bones. You hear the soft rustle of a lizard moving through dry leaves. Somewhere behind you, an old door breathes on its hinges. They say that beneath the clay roofs of memory live spirits who don't want anything from you, not offerings, not praise. Just a place to land for a moment. A pause. An exhale. And perhaps a bowl left out, collecting nothing but time. The first whisper arrives like a hum in your chest. Not outside of you, but inside. It feels like the comfort of a voice you once knew, reminding you that nothing is truly forgotten, just waiting to be remembered. Yoruba beliefs speak of Ori, the inner head, the personal soul. It chooses your path before you arrive in the world, and then forgets so that you can remember slowly. Sometimes, in moments like this, you feel Ori stir. Not to awaken fully, but to nod softly beneath your thoughts. The old woman who lives in this compound, perhaps you, perhaps someone you used to be, once told her grandchildren that wishes not spoken into the Calabash bowl would wander. They'd drift through the garden, sit on rooftops, curl into tree hollows. But those spoken, those stayed. Those settled into the bowl like moonlight made of breath. Tonight, the bowl doesn't low. It doesn't tremble. But it listens. That is enough. You remember something, or almost remember it. A night like this. A bowl like this. Only, it was raining. And someone, a child, or a much younger version of yourself, was singing under their breath while stirring water with a stick. The song wasn't meant for anyone. And yet, someone answered. Not with words, but with the scent of pepper and soil, and a wind that came from beneath the ground instead of above it. Yoruba cosmology is layered like a woven basket made of dusk. The living, the dead, the unborn. None are fully separate. There is no true over there. There is only a thick veil and the sound of drums trying to part it. Tonight, no drums play. But your heartbeat is steady, and that might be enough. You place your palm gently against the stone beside the bowl, and close your eyes. A story begins not with once upon a time, but with the feeling of soft footsteps across cool earth. You are being led. Not by hand, but by memory. The kind that arrives like steam on glass, just enough to trace something with your finger before it fades again. You follow it. You enter a house made of voice and silence. Each wall hums slightly, as if it were recently sung too. In the center, another bowl. But this one is upside down. Covered. Waiting. A voice low, old laughing says that one is for what was never said. You don't see the speaker. You don't need to. You know them. You've known them in every life. They taught you how to speak and how to keep quiet. They showed you how to crack cola nut without spilling its bitterness. They are the keeper of Orishas. And tonight, they are near. You open your eyes. You're back in the courtyard. The Calabash bowl before you is full now, not of liquid, not of light, but of something denser. A presence. A weightless gravity. You breathe. The whisper has stopped. But it has also stayed. And somewhere inside you, or he smiles, you remain beside the bowl, listening not with your ears, but with the spaces between your thoughts. The courtyard breathes gently around you, as if it too is remembering. A gecko skitters across the plastered wall, pauses, then vanishes into shadow. You don't move. Stillness feels like the truest language here. The bowl holds nothing visible, no water, no smoke, no coins. But in Yoruba thought, emptiness is not absence. Emptiness is invitation. A cleared space is sacred. It says something may arrive. Something always does. You lean closer, your breath warming the rim. In the traditions of IFA, it is said that when you whisper a wish or a grief into a sacred object, a stone, a leaf, a bowl, you are not asking for it to be granted or erased. You are allowing it to be heard by something older than time. Something that does not fix or punish, but remembers. The whisper you heard earlier was not an answer. Not quite. It was a nod. A spirit's equivalent of resting a hand on your shoulder. And now you feel it again. Not a voice this time, but a pull. Like a thread behind your ribs, tugging slightly, asking for your attention. You follow it. You walk not through the courtyard gates, but inward. Into memory. Into myth. The air shifts. The light grows warm and honey discolored, like morning in a place where no clocks have ever been built. A market emerges around you. But not the kind bustling with vendors shouting prices or children ugging at their mother's sleep. This market hums low, as if submerged in a dream. The stalls are made of woven reeds. The tables are carved from tree trunks. And the goods for sale, none are labeled. None are touched. Each item glows faintly with a soft, internal light. A pair of sandals once smoothed by a journey never taken. A folded shawl still scented with a grandmother's embrace. A broken gourd tied delicately with copper thread. This is not a market of things. This is a market of wishes, those forgotten, unfinished, or passed on. The Orishas here do not shop. They do not barter. They observe. River Orishas, especially, move silently among the stalls. Their robes shimmer like water in moonlight. Their feet leave no prints, even in dust. And when they glance your way, It is like seeing your reflection in a stream you once loved as a child but can no longer find on a map. You pause at one stall. There is a small bell. It has no clapper. It cannot ring. And yet, as you look at it, a sound stirs in your throat. A lullaby, half Midas remembered. A promise never spoken aloud. You pick it up. It feels warm. Familiar. Like something you meant to carry with you into this life, but forgot at the last moment. A woman beside you, tall, wrapped in layers of indigo cloth, speaks without turning. That one belonged to someone who prayed under an almond tree every sunset for 30 years. Not for change. Not for favor. Just for gratitude. The bell remembers. You glance at her, but her face is not clear. It is shifting layer. Like memory layered upon memory. A mosaic of past selves. You nod. Gently place the bell back. Further down the path, a child sits behind a row of bowls, each filled with river water. One glows golden. One ripples despite no wind. One is perfectly still, reflecting nothing. She gestures to the bowls and says, "Choose one." You kneel. The golden one hums with joy you haven't yet felt. The rippling one trembles with the energy of questions you've never asked. But the still one makes your heart slow. You point. The child nods. Dips her fingers in. Touches your forehead. And, for a breathless second, you feel what the Calabash bowl outside was always meant to hold. Not your wishes. Not your losses. But your readiness to listen again. The Orishas do not demand worship in the way humans often imagine. They are not hungry for praise. They are fed by attention. Quiet, reverent attention. To the rain. To the hum of stone. To the memory carried in laughter and in mourning cloth. And to the bowls. Always the bowls. You ask the child if she knows why ancestors whisper into them. She shrugs, then smiles. Because they're round, she says. And round things return. You nod. It makes sense in a way you don't need to explain. In Yoruba cosmology, time is not a line. It is a circle. A spiral. The ancestors do not disappear behind you. They walk beside you, just slightly out of step. Whispering not to command, but to remind. The market begins to fade. Not vanish, but recede. Like tide pulling back from the shore. You are in the courtyard again. The bowl sits before you. Empty. Listening. The whisper you heard now lives in your breath. The old woman who tended this bowl once told the story of a boy who wrote his dreams on palm leaves and floated them down the river. He believed the Orishas would collect them, sort them, save them. Years later, someone upstream found a leaf with a single sentence on it. I just want to remember why I came. They folded the leaf, placed it in a bowl, waited. Sometimes the river replies. You look down into your bowl again. There's nothing there. And yet, you are full. The courtyard has grown cooler. The shadows lengthen, not ominously, but like tired dancers settling after a slow waltz. You place your palms beside the Calabash bowl and notice that the earth beneath you has warmed. It is one of those quiet paradoxes you've started to understand in this place, how the soil, touched by the cool of dusk, somehow carries the warmth of memory more clearly than fire. You breathe in, deep and steady. The Calabash bowl is still. And then you remember something, not a fact, not a name, but a feeling. A long time ago, perhaps even before you had this current kin, you heard that bowls were once used not just to feed the body or hold water, but to capture stories. Whole tales, told aloud, would be spoken into the bull's mouth. And when no one was left to speak them again, the bull would keep listening, waiting for someone like you to come sit nearby, quiet enough to hear. You tilt your head slightly and let your fingertips graze the rim. A breeze rises, and you hear it. Not a voice, not language, but rhythm, pulse, echo. It is the whisper of the ancestors. In Yoruba tradition, ancestors are not dead. They are elevated. They are part of a lineage of spirit that walks parallel to yours. If you listen carefully, especially when the Calabash is near, you can hear their steps just behind yours, like bare feet in soft dust. Tonight, the bull is their window. You lean in, and a new story rises to meet you. It begins in a village too old for maps. A girl sits beneath an Iroko tree, humming to herself. She has no name, at least, not yet. In this story, names are not given. They are earned through silence, through dreams that stay often secret. The girl has a bow. It is not like yours. Hers is carved from a single piece of sacred wood and dyed with the juice of crushed berries. She doesn't eat from it. She doesn't store anything in it. She sings into it. Every night, before the moon lifts its head above the forest edge, she hums the stories she has gathered from the day ago that refused to be tied. A pot that cracked in sorrow, a boy who wept when he saw a fish leap from the river, too beautiful to be caught. She believes that when her time comes to leave this life, the bull will carry those stories to the next. And she is right. Because in this tale, when the girl becomes a woman and then an ancestor, her bowl is buried not with her body, but with her breath placed in the hollow of an ancient tree where Orishas are known to gather. Generations pass. The bowl remains. And sometimes, when the wind moves through that grove, the tree sings in her voice. Soft, clear, patient. This is how the Orishas remember what humans forget. You blink, and you are back in your own courtyard. The bowl before you is ordinary once more. Unglazed, humble, empty. And yet, you can't help but wonder, what stories has your bowl already heard? Perhaps it carries the sigh you gave when no one was around, the laughter you swallowed for the sake of peace, the wish you made without words, simply by looking up at the stars and hoping they were watching. In a divination, it is said that the Orishas favor offerings given without expectation. A whisper into a bowl, a leaf placed at the foot of a tree, a glance at the river that lingers a little too long. The ancestors are not listening for perfection. They're listening for sincerity. You place both hands flat on the earth, and you ask not aloud, but in the way breath becomes question without needing sound. What do you need from me? There is no reply in words, but your hands begin to tingle, as if the ground is remembering you. And then the whisper changes. It is no longer a breeze. It is a memory. Not yours. Not exactly. But you see it, soft mine as sedged and golden, like a candle flickering inside another world. A man, kneeling beside a Calabash bowl, tears in his eyes. Not from sorrow but reverence. He has just been told that the child in his wife's belly carries the soul of his grandfather. Not as metaphor, as fact. The village elder, with her painted cheeks and voice like cracked clay, confirmed it through a dream. And now the bowl, this very bowl, perhaps holds a mixture of rainwater and herbs. The man has whispered into it. A name. A question. A prayer. He hopes the spirit inside the child will answer when the time is right. Later, that bowl will sit at the child's bedside for 7 days. And sometimes the baby will coo in its direction as if recognizing an old friend. You pull your hands away. You've seen enough for now. The bowl, content, grows still again. And you find yourself smiling. Because some part of you, some ancient, undamaged part recognizes what is happening. This isn't a ritual. This is reunion. The bowl is not a tool. It's a threshold. A place where breath and silence become the same thing. You sit back, exhale. A thought rises, gentle as smoke. Perhaps the Orishas whisper into Calabash bowls, not to remind us of what to do, but of what we already know. And when you forget again, as all humans do, it will still be here. Waiting. Listening. You remain seated beside the Calabash bowl, letting your breath follow the slow rhythm of the night. Nothing pulls at you. Nothing presses. The kind of silence you found yourself in is not empty, it's attentive, like a room leaning closer to hear a story. You run your fingers lightly along the edge of the bowl again, as if brushing the rim of a still lake. A faint echo meets your touch, not in sound but in sensation. It is soft, like the memory of a name you used to have once, spoken only in dreams, or maybe between lifetimes. The herbalist had once said something curious, something that returns to you now, like a leaf drifting back from a forgotten breeze. Calabashists on just hold what you give them. They choose what they keep. You hadn't understood then, but tonight, something in you nods. Tonight, it's time to listen to what the bowl has chosen. The whisper stirs again, this time richer, deeper. It doesn't feel like a single voice, but like many woven together, like a river carrying hundreds of small wishes all flowing in the same direction. And in this current, a new story forms. It is an old Yoruba tale, though no one can agree who first told it. Some say it came from a priestess who never spoke except in song. Others say it arrived in a market wind, tugging at the ears of children too curious to ignore it. The tale is of a young boy who was born laughing, not crying. On the day of his birth, midwives gasped as they heard a bubbling sound, not a wail, not distress, but laughter. Tiny, full, minus-bodied joy. The elders declared it an omen. This child, they said, remembers something too beautiful to be afraid. And so he was named O Joy. But with joy, as always, comes a wave. The villagers noticed that Ao was not like the other children. He spoke little, but he listened to shadows. He played alone by the river, whispering to the water. He carried a Calabash bowl around his neck with a red thread, though no one had given it to him. When asked, he would say, "This bowl holds the market." They laughed gently. Thought it was a child's game. But as he grew older, Io remained the same, quiet, smiling, yet distant. As if the world he lived in was just a thin shell over the one he truly remembered. One day, the rains failed to come. The fields cracked. The market stalls emptied. People began to hush their laughter, to save their breath for prayers. Io, now barely 10, walked to the center of the village. He placed his Calabash bowl on the ground, knelt beside it, and whispered into it. "I remember the market before I was born," he said. "I remember the one made of light." The villagers paused. He continued, still whispering. There were no coins, no trade, no shouting. only exchange. You gave a memory, and you received a lesson. You offered a question, and you were handed silence. You gave away your fear and were given a path. Someone asked where this market was. He didn't answer with words. He tapped the side of the bull. Then slowly, the rain began to fall. Not everywhere. Just over the Calabash. It filled with water clear, shimmering, sweet minus smelling. Io dipped his fingers into it, then raised them to his lips. He smiled. He stood. He left the bowl behind. He disappeared into the forest. Some say he walked into the spirit world, returning to the market he remembered. Some say he was taken by the Orishas, chosen to be a messenger. Others say he still walks, bowl in hand, whispering to those who've forgotten how to hear. But the bowl, it stayed. And every year, on the anniversary of the day the rain returned, it hums softly beneath the earth. A pulse, a laugh, a memory of joy that never needed proof. You lean back slightly. The air around your Calabash has changed again. It's warmer now, as if Ao himself had passed through. And maybe he has. Because that's the thing with spirit stories, they aren't locked in the past. They're doorways, and they swing open whenever you're soft enough to step through. You glance up at the night sky. The stars aren't bright, but they're patient. Watching. Not waiting. You wonder what is the spiritual equivalent of a laugh at birth. Is it a vow fulfilled? A soul arriving without hesitation? A being who never forgot the light before form? In Yoruba belief, the spirit world is not somewhere else, it overlaps. It lives in mirrors and echoes in certain bowls, in sudden memories that feel too large for the moment they arrive in. The Orishas whisper not only because they're wise, but because they trust we'll remember when we're ready. You look down again. The Calabash bowl feels heavier now. Not physically, but with presence. You close your eyes. You imagine AYOS hands placing a single thing into your bowl, not a coin, not water, not a flower, but a laugh. And somehow, you hear it. Low, round, playful. The kind of laugh that doesn't ask why. You open your eyes. The bowl is empty, but not hollow. You sit quietly for a long time, and then you exhale. Because something in you, something you haven't named, has remembered a market made of light. And tonight, that is enough. The laughter fades, not abruptly, but like the glow of a lamp gently dimmed by dawn. You sit with the aftertaste of it warm, inexplicable, and oddly familiar. Like finding a folded note in your pocket, written in a version of your own handwriting you don't quite remember learning. The Calabash bowl rests quietly before you, its presence still humming beneath the surface. Not loud. Not assertive. Just there, like a door that never locked, waiting for you to return whenever you're ready. And so you do. You lean forward, hands resting lightly on your knees, breath as slow as a river that has learned patience. You don't speak not because you don't have words, but because silence has started to feel like a form of respect. A kind of reverence for what might rise if you don't crowd it with too much wanting. The bowl stirs again. This time, the whisper that curls upward is not a tale, it's a smell. A faint thread of roasted yam and market dust, the metallic scent of cory shells warmed by sunlight, and something floral, like dried hibiscus curled at the edge of memory. It takes you to a different moment. You're not in this story. You're a woman now. Her name was Ifasola. Born under a moonless sky, She came into the world with her fists closed tightly, as if gripping something she refused to forget. Her grandmother, a known diviner, took one look at her clenched hands and smiled. She remembers, the old woman said. She's still carrying her market weight. In Yoruba belief, newborns come from the spirit market or un. A vast and minus between place where souls choose their destinies, their difficulties, their blessings. Some choose with eyes wide, some with hesitation, and some, like Ifasola, come with promises wrapped so tightly that even breath feels like a negotiation. She didn't speak her first word until she was 5. Not because she didn't understand, but because she hadn't yet decided if this world deserved to hear what she brought with her. When she finally did speak, she pointed to a Calabash bowl at her grandmother's shrine and said, "I know it's in there." The adults exchanged glances. "No one opens that bowl," her uncle whispered. "It's been sealed since before she was born." But her grandmother only nodded. Let her speak. If a son walked to the book, she didn't open it. She sat in front of it and began to hum a tune no one recognized, but which made the hairs on their arms lift in unison. A moment later, the bowl moved. It didn't lift or slide a post. And from inside came a single note. Not quite a sound. Not quite silence. Later, her grandmother explained some bowls are tied to the soul before it even enters the body. They're not meant to be opened. They're meant to be remembered. And if Ifasola? She spent the rest of her life walking between markets. Not to trade food or cloth or gossip, but to listen. She would sit near the traders, never buying, never selling. Just listening. And sometimes, after hours of stillness, she'd lean forward, tap the ground beside her, and say softly, "H.E.S. about to ask forgiveness for something he doesn't remember doing." Or she's not really angry. She's grieving an unborn daughter from 2 lives ago. She never said it coolly. Only with softness. With presence. The market sellers came to accept her. Even love her. They leave her offerings pieces of dried fish, the corner of a prayer cloth, a child's drawing of a calabash. They called her the listener. But one day, she vanished. Left her bowl behind. And when someone dared to open it at last, they found nothing inside, nothing but a folded cloth stained with hibiscus. On the cloth, embroidered in faded thread, was a single phrase: "We come to the market to remember what we offered." You return from the memory gently, like surfacing from a dream you never meant to leave. The scent of hibiscus lingers, faint but honest. You glance at the ball again. Still closed. Still ordinary. But your chest feels lighter. Not like something has left, but like something has settled. You let your hand rest near the bowl's rim. And this time, a thought surfaces. Not a voice. Not a command. Just a wondering. What did you bring from the market? Not the literal one with baskets and shouting vendors, but the one before. The one you passed through just before your name was spoken into this body. The Yoruba tale of Oramile, the Orisha of wisdom and fate, who helps souls select their paths before birth. Each soul chooses its burden, its brilliance, its blind spots. Some choose quickly. Others take lifetimes to decide. And once chosen, it is sealed. In the spirit book. Some people carry their bowl in dreams. Some in laughter. Some never open it until the moment before death. And a rare few like, if a soul will remember, just enough to sit still beside it and listen. You don't know which one you are. Not yet. But tonight, you've sat beside the bowl long enough to suspect that remembering is not a lightning strike. It's a slow turning. A willingness to return again and again to what you've been carrying all along. The night deepens. Somewhere in the garden, the foxes yawn. And in the far distance, a faint market bell rings, not for trade, not for closing, but as if to say you are still expected. You smile. Not because you understand, but because the Calabash bowl remains patient. And something in you, something buried and blooming, is learning to be patient too. You stay near the bowl longer than you meant to. Time has bent around you in the soft way it does when the body forgets to measure itself in minutes. The hush, recent silence, its breath. The kind that continues even after all words have curled up and gone to rest. The moon is higher now, though you're not sure how long it's been. Its light catches the surface of the Calabash and draws a faint shimmer across the rim like memory made visible. You blink slowly and catch a glint from inside. Not light. Not reflection. Something else. Something like an invitation. You lean in again. You do not touch. But you watch. And slowly, a new story begins to gather, not from the bowl this time, but from the air itself. A stirring, like incense, smoke curling into pattern before vanishing. You feel it settle behind your eyes. You're elsewhere again. This time, it is a forest. Dense. Old. Too old to be measured in rings or remembered in stories. And in the heart of this forest, a young boy. They call him Omo-Minus-8 Eliwo, the child of the palm lines. Born with lines etched so deeply into his hands they looked like writing. Not random creases, but organized like a map. His mother believed the gods had pressed a contract into her son before he was born. A destiny sealed not in words, but in the folds of flesh. He was a quiet child, but not a passive one. At 7, he wandered into the forest with nothing but a Calabash bowl and a strip of cloth. When they found him 3 days later, he hadn't eaten nor spoken, but the bowl was full of fresh water, though the forest was dry. When asked where the water came from, he simply said, "They taught me where to place the bowl." The elders listened. They'd heard of the whisperers in the bowl. But this boy hadn't heard them been taught by them. Not voices. Not ancestors. Something quieter. He became a kind of ritual keeper, not of temple rites or chants, but of listening placements. Where to sip. Where to pour. Where to bury the whisper you aren't brave enough to say aloud. The belief among the Yoruba is that calabashes are more than containers. They are symbolic of the womb of creation, of covenant. A sealed calabash is a prayer not yet spoken. An open calabash is a life unfolding. Omo-Minus-8 Telly won't ever opened his calabash. He simply placed it where silence seemed to thicken. Then sat. Waited. And eventually someone nearby would begin to cry. Or confess. Or remember. He didn't answer. He didn't judge. He only listened. They said his bowl became the site of healing because he never claimed it. One day, during Harmattan season, a girl ran to him in panic. She had broken a family bowl sacred one and feared her ancestors' wrath. Omo-Minus-8 Eliwo walked with her, holding his own bowl under his arm. At the sight of the broken calabash, he now placed his bowl beside the shards, and said, "Only let them speak into this one now." And the girl knelt too. They say her dreams at night were full of gentle voices. Not forgiveness, exactly but understanding. A kind of echo made soft by time. The boy didn't live long. He died young. But they say his calabash remained in the forest. Never decayed. Never stolen. Just waiting, half-minus buried in roots, for whoever next needed to be witnessed without question. You blink again, and you're back. Your hands have moved instinctively to your lap, palm minus up, as if they too are waiting to be read. You glance down at the fine lines on your skin and wonder what was etched there before language. Before names? What promise did you sign in silence before you arrived? Some spiritual traditions say the soul writes its story on the body. Not in scars or birthmarks, but in the tiny details of the arch of your heel, the softness of your earlobe, the way you hum without noticing when the air feels heavy. It is said that we're on Malay records all these signs, binding them with energy not to limit you, but to remind you. Like spiritual bookmarks in the pages of your breath. You reach toward the calabash again, not to open it, but to be near. This time, your own thoughts start to rise. You think about the first time you felt seen, not praised, not rewarded, but seen. And you think about the last time you cried without knowing why. You think of your grandmother's hand show they poured water in slow spirals. You think of that childhood moment when you almost said something true and didn't, and the memory of it still tastes like a pebble tucked behind your tongue. The bowl listens. You don't know how, but you know it does. A low breeze stirs the grass at the edges of the night. It carries a scent you can't place, part soil, part citrus, part old song. You remember what Ifasola said before she disappeared, the bulldoze an answer. It reminds. Use it with that. You let it soak through your ribs and settle in the hollows behind your knees. Because maybe healing isn't fixing. Maybe healing is remembering long enough to be quiet with what hurts. And maybe the bowl isn't magic because of what it says, but because it teaches you to listen until your name softens. You close your eyes. Somewhere in the distance, a goat calls into the dark. Somewhere closer, a child stirs in sleep. And just beneath your breath, the memory of Omo Mine Asate LEWOS stillness begins to live in your posture. You breathe. The bull breathes with you. Neither of you rushes to speak. Neither of you needs to. The moon hangs lower now, no less bright, but quieter in its glow, like a candle nearing the end of its breath. You stretch your fingers gently, palms still up in your lap, and feel how your body has changed just by sitting in the presence of an old bull and older memory. Not in shape, but in softness. The calabash is no longer the center of your focus. It is simply part of the night, like the leaves above, or the hush below, or the whisper of a breath woven into shadow. You rise slowly. The herbalist, though you never saw him arrive, is now near again. He does not speak. He carries a clay lantern in one hand, and in the other a bundle wrapped in indigo cloth. He gestures with his chin. There is a narrow path. You follow. It winds deeper into the grove, not a forest, not quite. More like a memory pretending to be landscape. The trees here are thinner. Their roots curl above ground like resting serpents. The air hums not with insects, but with presence. You arrive at a round clearing ringed with stones. At the center, a shallow pit filled with ashes. Several calabash bowls are arranged around it, some upright, some on their sides, one cracked clean in half but still resting with a kind of dignity. The herbalist sets the lantern beside the largest bowl and unwraps the bundle. Inside are small objects one by one. A string of cowrie shells. a feather wrapped in red twine, a folded square of cloth that smells faintly of burnt kola nut, and finally, a small calabash filled with river stones, each one painted with a symbol, ancient and looping, as though written by a hand that didn't mind being misunderstood. He places these objects gently into a circle near the repeat. This, he finally says, is where the ancestors come when they're not ready to go. Use it again. He lights a small twist of herbs beside the cracked calabash. The smoke rises slowly, then stops, as if waiting. You notice something stirring in the earth. Not movement. A memory. Long ago, they say, there lived an old woman who spoke only in song. She walked from village to village carrying a calabash that rattled with stones no one ever saw. When she sang, it was not melody but messages. People would gather. She'd sit in the center of the market and sing. Not with rhythm. Not with tone. Just syllables that arrived like footsteps across water. And when someone cried nearby, she would reach into the bowl, not looking, and pull out a single stone. She'd place it in the courier's hand and walk away. Never a word exchanged. The stones became talismans. Some carved into necklaces. Others placed under pillows. One was buried beneath a tree that now grows fruit year minus round. They called her the Whisper Carrier. No one knew her real name. And one day, she disappeared mid-minus song, leaving only the bowl behind still full of stones, none of which made sound anymore. The Yoruba believe that ancestors who die with unfinished breath remain in the world not as ghosts, but as echoes needing a place to settle. They don't haunt. They hover. Listening for bulls, for feathers, for cloth that remembers prayer. And sometimes, when the right symbols are laid down, they come not to speak, but to breathe again. The herbalist begins to hum a low, wordless tone. Not a melody. Just something circular, spiraling out from his chest like thread unwinding from a spool. You watch the feather lift slightly. No wind. You notice the cracked calabash hum faintly. You place your hands in your lap again, feeling the vibration move through the stones into your spine. And you think of the ancestors who never got to explain themselves. The ones who died in silence. The ones whose names were lost when the last living person to speak them forgot how to dream. You wonder where those stories go. Not the heroic ones. The quiet ones. The ones that unfolded in kitchens and courtyards on late-night mutterings into laundry. Do the ancestors whisper, not because they're shy, but because they know we hear better when we sleep? There's a Yoruba story of a boy who never remembered his grandfather's face. Only that, every night, he would dream of a tree that grew upside down. And every morning, he'd find a new fruit on the windowsill. He never ate them. Just kept them in a basket until it overflowed. One day, the wind knocked the basket over. All the fruit rolled to the door. When he stepped outside to gather them, he saw the tree not in a dream, but in the world. It was growing sideways from the base of a cliff, full of fruit shaped like ears. He picked one and held it to his chest, and felt, for the first time, the shape of being remembered. Some say the tree still grows in a valley only children can find. Some say the fruit doesn't rot, it listens. You look at the cracked calabash again, and you feel something stir in your ribs. A memory you never lived. An apology you never spoke. A softness you've carried since before language. The herbalist stops humming. He nods toward the river stones. You reach out and pick one up. It's warm. You place it in your palm and close your hand around it. and you feel not a word, not a vision, but a knowing. The kind of knowing that lies in the back of the throat, behind the tongue, just before you say, I remember. Use it with that. No need to speak. The bowl will hold it for you. The feather will carry it. The ancestors will whisper not to correct, not to warn, but to witness. And you too are now one of the listeners. You place the stone beside the feather. The calabash glows faintly. Not light. Memory. And you smile not with your face, but with your chest. You are soft. And in the hush that follows, you know the bowl has accepted your silence as an offering. The smoke has curled into ribbons now, drifting upward in slow spirals that never quite reach the sky. Instead, they hover beneath the canopy, mingling with moonlight, like thoughts that aren't ready to leave but no longer need to stay. Use it still. The bowl no longer glows. The stone is no longer warm. But something lingers, like the way your hand remembers holding something long after you've set it down. The herbalist gathers the bundle again, wrapping the feather, the shells, the square of cloth. He does not rush. He does not look at you. He ties the knot with care, and when he speaks, it is not to you. Thank you, he says quiet, low, to the ear. The ashes, the bowl, or perhaps to someone who once sang across a market no longer standing. You rise. The grass beneath your feet feels more present than before. More awake. The path away from the repeat is not lit. But your feet do not need light. The stones remember your step. The trees breathe you forward. As you walk, your thoughts begin to shift. Not disappear. Just shift. Like a breeze that stops naming its direction. And as the grove narrows, you hear a sound soft, familiar, like water being poured into wood. Ahead, a small hut, woven from reeds and palm thatch. No door. Just drapes of blue fabric, moving gently. Inside, a round room with a floor of woven mats. In the center, a large calabash bowl, painted deep poker, rimmed with symbols that seem to shimmer the longer you don't look directly at them. Beside it, 3 stools. 2 are empty. One is occupied by a woman. Older, not ancient. Her face is calm. Not wise. Not knowing. Just rested. She doesn't look at you. But she speaks. You came from the river. You nod. You think. You feel the memory of the bull still humming. She gestures for you to sit. And when you do, she picks up a gourd from behind her and begins to pour something into the large calabash. Not tea. Not water. Sound. It emerges like a liquid, but there's no splash. No scent. Only vibration. You feel it in your chest before you hear it in your ears. The ball begins to hum again. Not like before. This time, it breathes in, then out. The woman speaks slowly. These are the wishes people forgot to keep. You look down. In the calabash, the sound settles into ripples. I keep them here, she says. Not for them. For the river. You glance up. She explains. Wishes, when forgotten, drift. They become heavy. They sink. Sometimes the Orishas pick them up. Sometimes they ignore them. But this bull? He listens. You ask what happens to the wishes. She smiles. Sometimes they echo back. In dreams. In quiet ideas. and the feeling that maybe you've done this before. You ask if any of the wishes ever come true. No, she says gently. But some remember what they once meant. And that is enough. You watch as she pours more sound into the bowl. It begins to rise visually like mist, but also emotionally. You feel full. She hands you a small calabash, no bigger than your palm. Place one in here, she says. You blink. One what? She shrugs. You'll know. And you do. Not with clarity, but with trust. You lean over the large bowl. Let your breath move slowly. Let your mind soften. And from inside, you a shape. Not a word. Not a memory. A shape of feeling. A wish. Not from this life. Not even from this soul, perhaps. A wish like let me be small again. Or let me be forgiven before I speak. Or maybe let the silence be enough. You place the wish, whatever shape it's taken, into the tiny calabash. The woman closes the lid. She sets it on a shelf behind her, among dozens of other tiny lidded gourds. None are labeled. But Ohan. The Yoruba tell a story of a fisherman who cast nets not for fish, but for dreams. He would sail before dawn, alone, chanting softly to the water. Each time he pulled the net, he'd find one item. Never food. Once, a broken sandal with a single pearl tucked in the strap. Once, a scrap of cloth with a child's name stitched in invisible thread. Once, a feather still wet, though no bird had flown overhead for days. He never spoke. He'd take the item to the edge of the village and place it in a bowl buried beneath the altar. People laughed at him. But one day, the village well ran dry. And when they dug deeper, they found a spring flowing from the base of a bowl filled with strange treasures. They drank and dreamed of old wishes. Some they had never spoken aloud. Some they didn't remember making. Some they never knew were theirs to begin with. The woman reaches beneath her stool and hands you a piece of cloth. Bleu. Frayed at one edge. You don't know why, but you press it to your chest. It smells like smoke and sweetness. Like your grandmother's breath when she hummed without noticing. You rise. She does not stop you. You leave the hut. The stars above are quieter now. The path behind you forgotten. The path ahead already listening. And somewhere in a shelf of lidded calabash bowls, a wish hums gently. Not asking. Not waiting. Just remembering. You walk slowly now, not because you are tired, but because the ground beneath your feet seems to be woven from stillness. Each step is like pressing into the fabric of a dream too soft to fully wake from. The calabash hut behind you fades not as though disappearing, but as though dissolving into the moment, becoming part of the breath around you. The wish you place still lingers in your chest, but not like weight. More like the warm curve of a memory that doesn't need words anymore. Ahead, the path narrows again. Moss rises in patches, and strange blossoms glow faintly at the edges like stars that decided to root themselves in soil for a while. Their color isn't quite real. Not blue. Not white. Not purple. Something between shimmer and absence. The herbalist reappears. Not dramatically. HES just there now, as if HED been walking beside you all along. He does not speak yet, but he gestures to a new clearing. Here, a circle of carved stools. 7 of them. At their center, another calabash, this one massive crack at the rim, mended with strands of copper and dash. Around its base are hundreds of tiny carved figures, no taller than your thumb, arranged in a spiraling mosaic. Each one faces inward. You ask if this is another whispering bowl. The herbalist nods once. This one doesn't listen. It remembers. You tilt your head. He kneels beside one of the tiny figures and brushes it with his sleeve. The figure glows, just faintly, and a sound rises from a Calabash voice, low and slow, speaking a name that doesn't quite reach your ears. That's a name someone forgot, he says. Not because they work airless, but because the world has too much of them. You sit on one of the stools. He continues, we carve the figures for those who passed without rituals. For those who never had anyone whisper their name into fire or water. You glance around. There are so many. He places a small wooden knife in your palm. Tonight you carve one. You look down. The wood is warm, pliant. It yields not to force, but to rhythm. You ask whose name you're carving. He smiles. Whichever one woke you last week. The dream you couldn't quite remember. The stranger you felt you knew. You breathe slowly and begin. The wood welcomes each gesture. You're not sculpting a face. You're remembering a feeling. A kind gaze. A patient silence. Someone who always waited for the last person to be served before eating. Someone whose hands were always warm, even in the cold. When you finish, you place the figure in an open space in the spiral. It fits. The bowl hums. Not with approval. Just recognition. And then the whisper comes not to your ears, but to your ribs. You don't know the language, but you understand it. The Yoruba speak of Igungun, ancestral spirits who return through masked dancers, their robes swirling like storm and silence. The Igungun do not perform. They arrive. They carry the memory of the lineage, the breath of the forgotten, the rhythm of those who once sang lullabies to children who now walk with phones in their hands. To host an Igungun, one must prepare in silence for days. No salt. No mirrors. Only smoke and fabric and rhythm. Then, when the dance begins, the spirit enters not to haunt, not to warm, but to stir something gentle in the crowd. Sometimes, they stop before a single person. Not chosen. Not special. Just ready. And they touch the chest once, where grief pretends to sleep. That's all. Just the price of memory. And something unknots. The herbalist sets down a bell made of Gordon bone. It does not ring, but it pulses. You ask if all these figures, these names, ever get called again. He shrugs. Maybe not. But they are no longer wandering. They have a place. A seat. A silence. You reach out and touch the Calabash rim. It is not cold. It is not warm. It is like touching the moment just before sleep, the part where your body gives permission and your soul steps sideways. You close your eyes. You do not fall asleep. But something within you does. A single name floats up, not yours. Not now. Just remembered. Not spoken aloud, but honored. And for a moment, the bowl ceases its whispering. Not from absence, but from fullness. The herbalist rises and walks a slow circle around the mosaic. He nods once. The wind hushes. And then, you both leave. The Calabash remains. So do the names. So do the carved figures. Each one now seated. Each one home. The night has grown deeper, though you cannot quite tell how. There is no clock, no moon that shifts visibly in the sky. Time here behaves like a hush. It does not pass, it waits. And you too are learning to wait without asking what for. You follow the herbalist along a winding corridor of reeds and shells. They clatter softly in the breeze like distant chimes, but their sound carries something older than melody. A memory, perhaps. A rumor of a conversation never finished. Ahead, a soft light glows, round and low to the ground. It pulses slightly, as though breathing. You enter a round chamber lined with hanging calabashes. Some are plain and smooth. Others are carved with delicate lines like water maps, river trails, or human veins. Each sways gently, though there is no breeze here. Just presence. At the center of the chamber stands a raised wooden platform, and on it, a single calabash bowl rests on a woven mat. Inside a shallow pool of water, with petals floating on the surface white, red, and one petal that shifts color slowly from yellow to blue to green. This is the listening bowl, the herbalist says, his voice low and musical. It's used only once each season, when someone forgets why they came. You ask if it's meant to tell them. He shakes his head. No. It reminds them how to ask. He gestures to the mat. You kneel slowly, feeling the wood give slightly beneath your knees. The bowl is quiet. The petals do not move. The color mine is changing. One seems aware of your gaze. In Yoruba practice, he continues, some calabashes are used not to hold, but to echo. A whisper into them goes and stay it travels. It moves along the line of ancestors until someone, somewhere, decides to answer. Not right away. Maybe not ever. But the bowl keeps the question moving. You glance at the water. It reflects nothing. Not your face. Not the petals. Only light, as if the bowl prefers suggestion over detail. He nods for you to speak. You whisper not a question exactly. More like a shape. Something between a wondering and a wish. The petals stir. The red one drifts first, moving toward the edge, then away again. The color mine is shifting, one follows next, trailing in a slow spiral. No answer comes. But your breath feels different. Your chest lighter. Your shoulders warmer. You don't need to understand, he says. You need to witness. You recall an old story he told earlier of a market child who remembered her past life by the way she wrapped melon seeds in a cloth she had never seen before. She didn't cry when scolded. She simply whispered to her calabash bowl at night. And one morning, it whispered back. That child's bowl, they say, still lives in the temple at the riverbed. But no one touches it now. It hums on its own, especially in spring. Some believe it became its own spirit. You look again at the bowl before you. The petals have aligned, forming a shape, not a symbol you recognize, but something pleasing. Balanced. True. You reach toward the bowl, but the herbalist gently touches your hand before it meets the water. Not everything that speaks wants to be touched, he murmurs. Some truths bloom only in distance. You let your hand fall. And the bowl ripples. Just once. Like breath. The calabashes around the room begin to hum, not loudly. More like vibration. Resonance. As if they are responding to the question you didn't know how to ask. The herbalist lights a single taper beside you. The flame leans sideways, then stills. He closes his eyes. So do you. In this darkness, the bowl still glows faintly. The petals steady. And from somewhere, perhaps beneath the platform, perhaps inside your own chest, a sound begins. It is not music, not voice, just a tone. The sound of intention and angling itself from urgency. The sound of a question resting. Mystics, the herbalist says softly, still argue whether the soul chooses its next vessel, or whether it is chosen for them by a forgotten agreement made beneath a star we've never named. You smile. The bowl seems to smile too. The petals scatter again as though in exhale. You whisper your name, not the name you use in daily life, but the one that stirs only in dreams. The bowl receives it. Does not echo it. Just receives. And that is enough. You rise. Your knees do not ache. Your shoulders feel new. You leave the listening bowl behind, but not empty. No words follow. The herbalist simply walks ahead, and you follow. The path curves again, bending around something unseen. The shells on the corridor clatter once more, this time in a rhythm that sounds almost like a goodbye, or maybe a welcome. The calabashes remain, swaying gently. Their hum fades behind you. But you carry its rhythm now, tucked somewhere below your ribs, beside the quietest questions you've never spoken aloud. The shell corridor winds behind you like the echo of a forgotten lullaby, and ahead, the night thickens not in darkness, but in silence. A new kind of silence. Not the kind that begs to be filled, but the kind that listens. The kind that holds. You and the herbalist walk until the woven path gives way to bare earth. It's damp but not muddy. Each step releases a scent rich, old, layered with crushed leaves and the sweetness of roots left too long underground. He says nothing, and neither do you. Soon, you come upon a grove of trees so close together, their branches braid across the sky, creating a living ceiling of leaves. It filters the moonlight into broken lace, deappling the clearing with soft shadows. In the center of this grove stands a large, a bright gourd taller than the herbalist and far wider. Its surface is etched with swirling patterns that spiral inward, drawing the eye again and again toward a single opening near its base, just large enough to place your face near and listen. This is not a bug. This is the whispering Calabash. He gestures toward it but doesn't explain. You step forward. The ground near the Calabash is layered with old cloths, pressed smooth by many knees. Some are red, others earth minus stone. All have been softened by time. You kneel. Your breath is even. You bring your face to the opening. At first, you hear nothing. But then, softly like breath on the back of your neck, a voice begins. It is not a language, not words, but cadence. Like the sound of your grandmother humming to herself while she shells beans. Like the rise and fall of a market at dusk. Like the inside of a dream you had at age 5, where someone you never met told you to plant the blue seed in your left pocket. You listen. This Calabash, they say, holds ancestral whispers that have traveled across centuries. It is said that when a soul dies and forgets the path back to or on the spiritual sky realm, they can send a whisper here, hoping a descendant will someday kneel and hear them. Some of those whispers are lonely. Some are full of laughter. Some just wait. You press your ear closer. One whisper curls into your ear, soft as a spider thread you wore yellow the day we said goodbye. You don't know who it was meant for. Maybe not even you. But your eyes warm anyway. You wait. The whisper fades. Another rises. The river was kind to me. I crossed with my left foot. A pause. Then laughter small, bubbling. The herbalist sits across from me now, head bowed, hands resting on his knees. He doesn't speak, but his stillness speaks enough. The calabash hums again. You promised you would sing at my shrine, it says. And then silence. You don't answer. You're not meant to. The gourd isn't for replies. It's a one-way invitation. A reminder that silence itself is sometimes a prayer. You sit back slowly. The whispers fade, curling back into the hollow space inside. He nods once. They return to this place, he says. The ones who were not remembered. Not in name, but in gesture. A missed song. An unfinished blessing. You ask if the whispers ever fade completely. He smiles, eyes soft. They don't need to. They change shape. Some become birdsong. Some become river mist. Some become that feeling when you forget what you were looking for and realize you already found it. You walk together to the edge of the grove. There, under a tree with bark the color of storm clouds, rests a bowl not for offerings, but for memory. Inside it, dry leaves, threads, and a single ivory bead. You pick up the bead. It hums faintly, like the calabash. You place it in your pocket. He doesn't stop you. They want to be carried, he says. Not to be possessed. Just accompanied. You look back once more at the towering calabash. It is still, but somehow watching. You bow. Not because you were told to. Because something in your chest bends without asking. The path curves again. And as you walk, you begin to hum. A tune you don't know. Or maybe you once did. And the air hums with you. The trees open slightly, and the herbalist steps ahead. The sound of water returns low, constant. Like the river remembered you. Like someone, somewhere, is singing. We're waiting. The sound of water grows clearer, now no longer a murmur behind the leaves, but a presence that guides your feet. Not rushing or roaring, just existing with confidence. Like something that has never once questioned its direction. You and the herbalist descend a short slope where moss thickens underfoot and the air cools into a wet hush. Ahead lies a wide, slow-minus moving river, dark as molasses, lit only by the shimmer of moonlight that the current refuses to hold. This is not a river for crossing. This is a river for remembering. Along its banks, dozens of calabash bowls float gently, not spinning, not colliding, just drifting like quiet thoughts. Some are empty. Others carry offerings, feathers, smooth stones, carved tokens, palm leaves inscribed with ash. None of them sink. None of them rush. You stand at the edge, and the herbalist bends beside a stack of fresh calabashes. He selects one that fits perfectly in the cradle of his hand, smooth, light, warm from the sun it hasn't seen in days. This one, he says softly, is for your whisper. He hands it to you, and for a moment, it feels alive. Not pulsing, not breathing, but listening. You look at the river. You look at the bow. You ask if it matters what you say. He shakes his head. Only that you say it aloud. So you kneel. The calabash in your hands. The river before you. The moon above. And slowly, quietly you speak. Not a prayer. not a plea. Not even a memory you're sure is yours. Just a whisper, I forgive you. And then you pause. Another breath. Another whisper, maybe you were right. And still one more, softer, maybe I'm ready. You do not cry. But something inside you leans inward. Like a tree adjusting its roots after rain. The herbalist does not watch you. He hums to the river low, melodic, like a lullaby forgotten before it ended. You place the calabash on the water. It floats. Not away, but inward, toward the current that circles rather than flows. Some say this river leads nowhere. Others say it circles the spirit market, beneath it, beside it, sometimes through it. The Orishas of the river Osu, Imoya, Obar said to collect these bowls. Not to keep, but to listen. To turn whispers into threads. To spin those threads into futures, or dreams, or moments of sudden clarity in the middle of washing rice. Your bold riff. You wonder if it will be heard. You wonder if it already has. The herbalist stands. We don't name the river, he says, because it already knows who it is. You nod. And as you walk the bank, you notice others have come before you. Footprints softened by dew. Stones arranged in circles. One calabash placed upside down, perhaps meant to carry us islands instead of a whisper. You ask him if every bowl gets heard. He pauses. Yes. But not always right away. Some must wait, until the dream that needs them is ready to begin. You imagine your whisper catching on a breeze, circling in mist, landing in someone's dream a century from now. You smile. Softly. Because sometimes that's enough. You come upon a tree that leans over the water. Its bark is carved with hundreds of tiny marks, lashes, swirls, eyes, spirals. Each one a symbol. Each one, perhaps, a name. At its base lies a basket filled with pebbles. You take one. Smooth, cool, unremarkable. He watches. You can place it in the river, he says. Or in your shoe. Or in your soup. Whatever feels like listening. You look at the stone. You close your fingers around it. And you decide your pocket. Because some memories deserve to travel with you a little longer. The river keeps humming. The calabashes keep drifting. And far upstream, you see a figure, a woman with a bowl in her hands, whispering something so softly, not even the moon can hear. She places the bowl on the water. It spins once, then stills, and begins to drift toward yours. The herbalist smiles. Sometimes bowls find each other, he says. You feel that hum again, like the calabash from earlier. Like someone somewhere has just remembered the words you almost forgot. And you walk back from the river, not lighter, not heavier, just more awake. More yourself. And maybe more someone else's as well. The bowl is gone. The whisper remains. In the water. In the wind. In the pause between one breath and the next. And that, perhaps, is enough. The path that carries you away from the river is thick with quiet, as if the trees along the trail are absorbing the final echoes of your whisper, tucking it into their bark for safekeeping. Your feet press into soft earth, and behind you, the water murmurs like someone humming to themselves in another room, distant but familiar. The herbalist walks beside you in silence. There is no need to speak. What needed to be said was already given to the river. You are no longer carrying it. Now, You are simply walking. You reach a small grove marked by hanging charmed small gourd minus like calabashes, hollowed and painted with ash minus white spirals, suspended from branches by faded threads. They sway slightly, not from wind, but from something subtler. You feel it in your chest more than your skin. This, the herbalist says softly, is the grove of waiting spirits. You pause beneath the nearest charm. It doesn't move, but you sense it noticing you. In Yoruba tradition, he continues, some spirits return quickly. Others stay nearby, watching, listening, not ready yet for another body. Not finished with the last one. He gestures to the hanging calabashes. We place these here, filled with breath and silence, so the waiting ones have something to settle into. You raise an eyebrow. Breath and silence? He nods. To things the living forget to offer. But they're what the Midas between most needs. You walk slowly among the calabashes. Each one is different painted card or wrapped in bits of cloth. One holds a feather. Another has a coin inside. One weighs a little more than the others, like it's still undecided about coming back. You remember stories told in hushed tones of children born with the same freckle as a lost grandmother, or cats who stare too long at empty corners, or dreams that whisper names you've never heard aloud but somehow know. Some say the spirits linger here, drawn by a familiar scent or a remembered lullaby. Others believe they come to listen to the world without being required to answer. You run your fingers along the thread of one charm. It hums slightly. Just slightly. And you ask, what do they wait for? The herbalist's gaze lingers on the branches. A good question. A soft place. A body that won't rush. He bends beside a low table in the center of the grove. On it rests a shallow bowl of water, a strip of bark, and a small bell shaped like a snail's shell. He taps the bell. The sound is small, gentle, like a memory brushing its own shoulder. He says some midwives ring these when a child is born, to let the grove know there's room again. That someone is asking, without knowing they're asking. You sit beside the table. The air here feels full, though nothing moves. You ask if the spirits ever speak. He smiles. Not in words. But sometimes a stranger offers just the right comfort at the right moment. Sometimes a smell stops you in your tracks. Sometimes you find an old note in a drawer where you cleaned last week. You nod, because you felt that. You just didn't have a name for it. He hands you a strip of cloth and a bit of charcoal. If you like, you can write something for one of them. A welcome. A question. Or just a shape that feels right. You think for a moment. Then draw a spiral. A small one. Tight at the center, loosening outward. You tie it gently around the stem of one of the quieter calabashes. It doesn't sway, but it receives you. You know it. The herbalist offers you a sip of warm water from a gourd. Not tea. Not medicine. Just water that has sat beneath the same moon for 3 nights in a row. You drink, and feel something inside. You settle like a stone finally finding its corner in the riverbed. You look around the grove one last time. The charms still sway. The spirits still listen. Not waiting in sadness. Not clinging. Just being. The herbalist says, some say when the wind here shifts just right, you can hear laughter. You listen. Not for sound, but for feeling. And in the back of your mind, you hear a chuckle. Smug. Kind. Like a friend remembering your joke long after you've left the room. You smile. And rise. The path continues. Not away from the spirits, but with them. For they are not behind you now. They are beside you. Carried in the quiet. In the breath. In the cloth. In the spiral. Waiting with you. Not for something to happen, but for you to notice it already has. The path meanders again, narrowing as the grove of Calabash recedes behind you. The silence they carried remains in your chest, like the weight of a folded letter never opened, yet deeply known. You walk with it, not as a burden but as a companion. The air shifts as you pass between two tall stones etched faintly with curling marks. These are not names, not prayers, but memories carved in a language that does not use words. Spirals, waves, marks like teeth and tears. You reach out and press your palm to the stone. It's warm, faintly pulsing, like a held breath that will never exhale. The herbalist is waiting just ahead, crouched beside a flat altar of driftwood, its edges blackened from ceremonial use. Scattered on it are small objects, bits of bone, corn husk dolls, cracked pieces of shell, and one pale calabash, split open like a question mark. This, he says, is where we speak to the ancestors. You sit beside him on the soft moss, careful not to disturb the layout. In Yoruba practice, you've heard, ancestors are not just remembered, they are consulted, fed, honored, and, on occasion, challenged. They are not perfect, but they are present. Sometimes, the herbalist explains, you don't ask for answers. You just let them know you're still listening. He places his hand lightly on the open calabash bowl and closes his eyes. You mimic him, letting your breathing slow. The wind doesn't blow, here it curls. As if thinking. As if dreaming through you. You feel something stir in the space around your thoughts. Not a word. Not an image. Just the sensation of being observed kindly. The calabash bowl, cracked long ago, begins to hum. Barely audible. But you feel it in your bones. The herbalist begins to hum with ida low, vibrating note that rises and falls like a tide. The bowl resonates in response, as if remembering the sound. In this form, he says, the calabash becomes a mouth. Not to speak, but to carry breath between worlds. You look inside. There's only ash, and something glinting faintly, like the sheen of memory. He tells you about a custom not often practiced now. Before a difficult decision, someone would whisper into a calabash, seal it with red thread, and place it beneath the elder tree. Days later, they would return and listen to the bowl not for words, but for changes in the wind around it. That was how they knew what had been received. You ask him the answer? He smiles. Sometimes, the answer was that the question was too soon. You reach for a small shell beside the bowl and turn it in your fingers. There's a notch carved into its center, and a tiny bead tucked inside. It rattles softly when shaken. That one, he says, is for restless souls. Those who left mid-mind a sentence. He gestures to a gourd wrapped in black string. That one helps ancestors who are still arguing. You raise an eyebrow. Yes, he says with a soft chuckle. They still bicker. Especially over love. Especially over inheritance. The dead are quieter than us, but not necessarily wiser. You nod. That feels right. The idea of ancestors not as deities, but as complicated relatives half minus dream, half minus lantern watching you with affection and just a little mischief. He pours a handful of dry herbs into a small clay dish and lights them with a taper pulled from his sleeve. The smoke rises not in coils, but in straight, wavering threads like thin spirits making their way back to the mouths that once spoke them. You take a moment and think of someone. You don't name them, but you place a small stone beside the bowl, shaped like a teardrop. The herbalist nods. They'll know. The breeze that follows is brief, warm, and smells faintly of something familiar, maybe a spice from your childhood kitchen. Maybe your grandfather's tobacco. Maybe the perfume your aunt wore at your baptism, when you were too young to remember but somehow do. You look at the stone again. It has moved, but it holds more now. The herbalist uncorks a bottle filled with water from the first rain after a funeral. He pours a single drop into the calabash. It hisses, soft and quick, then vanishes. That's all it needs, he says. An offering doesn't have to be loud. Only sincere. You nod, and place your hands over the bowl. There is no vibration, no sound, but there is peace. The kind that does not reward you for arriving, but simply makes room for you because you're there. You ask softly, do they ever stop listening? He shakes his head. They're just waiting for you to speak less like a child and more like a soul. Use it there longer than you meant to, until the moss beneath you no longer feels damp and the bowl no longer feels foreign. It's just another shape that holds breath, like your own chest, like memory, like time. Eventually, the herbalist gathers the scattered objects. He leaves your teardrop minus shaped stone where it is. It belongs there now. You rise slowly, not from stiffness, but from reverence. The calabash bowl returns to its place on the driftwood. The wind circles the altar once. Just once. And the path ahead begins to glow. Not brightly. Just enough. You walk toward it, still carrying nothing. But held, nonetheless. The path curves gently now, as if guiding you through the folds of a forgotten lullaby. You can no longer hear the whisper of the calabash bowl, but something of its silence has joined your own. A silence that doesn't ask for retreat or stillness, but rather a kind of deep listening one that feels like rain soaking into old roots. You follow the herbalist through a narrow grove of blue-minus-tinted fig trees, their trunks knotted with age, their leaves shaped like open hands. One of them bears ribbons of cloth tied around its limbs, faded reds, pale yellows, dark greens. Prayers, perhaps, or memories dressed as offerings. These trees, the herbalist murmurs, are fed by dreams that weren't ever spoken aloud. You pause beneath one. A long ribbon flutters down and brushes your cheek. It smells faintly of camphor and cinnamon bark, ingredients often burned by Yoruba mothers when asking Orisha for protection, especially over children who wake screaming from dreams they do not understand. He beckons you onward. At the end of the grove, you find a small clearing circled by flat stones. In its center, a gourd sealed with beeswax, sitting in a bed of ash. The last bowl, he says. Not a calabash this time. Something older. A vessel used not for divination or remembrance, but for storage. Use it. He does not explain. He waits. You lean closer. And you hear it not sound, but rhythm. The faint beat of something held. a pulse. This, he finally says, is the bowl that keeps promises. You blink. He nods slowly. When a soul makes a vow before rebirth, it is whispered into this kind of bowl, then sealed. It travels with them not physically, but energetically. It's why some people are born with convictions they can't explain. You reach out and touch the wax seal. It is warm. And suddenly, you remember something that was never told to you, only felt. That moment in childhood when you knew you'd never harm a butterfly. Or when, during illness, you swore you'd live not just for yourself, but to teach someone how to sing again. You may have forgotten the words, but the bowl has not. Not all vows are kept, the herbalist says gently. Some souls forget. Some change paths. But the bowl doesn't judge. It simply waits. He uncorks the beeswax seal. There is no scent. No light. But the rhythm is clearer now. A slow thump like the distant echo of a promise still moving beneath the surface of your life. He hands you a handful of soil from beneath the fig trees. It's dark and flecked with gold dust, mica, or stardust. You cannot tell. If you wish, he offers, you may feed the bowl. You scatter the soil around its base. The gold flakes catch faint light. They shimmer once, then disappear into the ash. And the thump softens. Not quieter. Just fuller. Content. He reseals the bowl, places both palms on either side, and whispers one word, Kip. It isn't Yoruba, or English, or any language you know, but it feels like something you once promised. You exhale, slow and even. The way leaves fall. The way lullabies in. He lifts the bowl and cradles it against his chest, and tells you this. There are stories that say, if you forget your vow completely, the bowl becomes a thorn, hidden in your path. It will prick your soul not to punish, but to remind. You nod, slowly. The idea doesn't frighten you. It comforts you. That's something would care enough to bring you back to your path, even if it meant a little sting in the middle of an ordinary day. He replaces the bowl in the earth, covers it gently with ash, and says nothing more. The two of you use it for a while, until the fig leaves stop whispering. Then you rise. Together, you leave the clearing, back into the path where fig trees end and the soil lightens. A soft breeze follows, the kind that carries the scent of far-off incense, and maybe the faintest trace of the promise you made before you were born. The herbalist leads you back to the original circle of stones where you first arrived. The fire is low now. The kettle is cool. The night has grown full. Soon, he says, you will rest. You feel it too, but not with the weight of exhaustion, with the gentleness of return. He offers you one last gesture, a small, empty calabash bowl, uncracked, polished with oil and time. This one is for your next story, he says. You take it. It fits in your hand. Light, yet filled with something you don't need to name yet. And as the stars deepen overhead, and the world grows quiet again, you hear the faintest trace of something familiar. A breath. A pulse. A bow. A vow. And you smile. Because the promise still lives in you. Even now. You carry the empty calabash in your hands as you walk, though it does not feel empty. Its surface, warm with oil and centuries, glows softly in the night light. The herbalist walks just ahead, his robes whispering through tall grasses, leading you once more through a landscape that feels less like land and more like memory taking root. This time, you pass no structures, no shrines, no market stalls. Only a long, meandering trail marked by shallow stones half Midas buried in moss. These paths, the herbalist says over his shoulder, are not laid by humans. They appear where souls have wandered more than once. You glance down. Indeed, the path seems worn not by feet, but by longing. He continues. Every soul walks it differently. Some rush. Some sleep between the stones. Others walk backward, thinking they can undo something. You ask how long the path is. He smiles. It ends when it's ready. And so you walk. The calabash in your hand begins to hum not audibly, but subtly, like the way you can sometimes feel music through the soles of your feet. You ask what the bull wants. He replies, nothing yet. But eventually, it will collect something from you. An imprint. A tone. A gesture made in silence. You tilt it forward gently. Nothing spills out, of course. But the gesture feels right. And then, you see them. Alongside the path, every few stones, a small pile of items. A child's sandal. A torn strip of blue cloth. A coin so rusted it seems more like a leaf than metal. A cracked bill. These are things people left behind without realizing, the herbalist explains. Not objects, but symbols. Each one carries a truth they didn't need to take forward. You pause beside the cracked bell. Its surface is etched with concentric rings, like ripples in a pond. Someone, he says, once gave up the need to be heard. You touch it lightly. It doesn't ring. But the silence it carries seems to echo inside your chest. You ask if you must leave something too. The herbalist nods. But you won't know what it is until it's time. You walk a little farther. And then a faint scent drifts across the trail, smoke and flowers. You follow it. Around a bend, the path widens into a circular stone platform encircled by tiny flickering lights. No flame. No candles. Just small pulses of glow like fireflies made of memory. In the center, a raised altar carved from the song. No decoration. Just for words etched into the stone. You lean closer. But the words shift. You ask what they say. He tilts his head. That depends on who's reading. You blink. And the letters shimmer just long enough to form a sentence that pierces somewhere between your ribs and your breath. You are forgiven for forgetting. The lights flicker brighter for a moment. Then, fade. The herbalist gestures for you to kneel. You do. He places a shallow bowl of water before you, moonlit, calm, still. This water, he says, is for looking, not seeing. You peer in. And for a moment, your reflection is not your face, but dozens of faces overlaid. An old man clutching prayer beads. A girl weaving palm leaves beside a river. A merchant handing out food to strangers and not keeping track. All you. But perhaps only echoes of you. You ask if you've lived all of them. He smiles. Some of them live in you. Some of them are only waiting. You dip a finger into the water. It ripples and the images vanish. And then your calabash pulses again. You lift it. And something drops into it from above. Not visible. Not heavy, but unmistakable. A soundless thud. You look at the herbalist, startled. He nods. A vow just returned to you. You ask how. Because you're ready to carry it differently now. You hold the calabash closer. It's still light, but now undeniably yours. No longer a vessel of silence, but one of gentle memory, of promises softened by time, of truths you forgot not out of carelessness but necessity. You stand. The altar vanishes behind you as soon as you turn, as though it only exists for that exact moment of realization. The path narrows again, and the stars above grow brighter, not closer, not grander, but more aware. As if they too have remembered your name. You and the herbalist walk without speaking. Even your footsteps seem quieter now. You glance at the trees around you. They don't look like the ones before. More like sculptures of bark and shadow. And between them, faint strands of white thread drift in the breeze. You reach out and touch one. It clings to your fingertip, then vanishes. He explains, the ancestors say souls shed attachments like silk as they near rest. You ask how many more strands you must pass. He answers, as many as you need. You smile. Not because it's funny, but because the answer feels true. And as you walk, your shoulders feel lighter. Not empty. Just settled. The path curves again, toward a glow you can't yet name. But the calabash warms in your hand. And that, for now, is enough. The glow ahead reveals itself slowly, not like sunlight bursting over a horizon, but more like embers being coaxed to life beneath ash. It is amber golden, with a pulse that isn't steady but rhythmic, like someone breathing in sleep. You and the herbalist walk toward it. The path dissolves into moss, then into a surface that's not quite water, not quite stone, more like memory pressed into form. And then you see them. Calabashes. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Suspended from tree branches by threads of dyed fiber, red, indigo, gold. Some hang low, swinging gently. Others rest high in the branches, cradled like bird nests. Each one is sealed. Each one hums. This, the herbalist says, is the grove of remembered whispers. You glance up. Some of the calabashes glow faintly, as if stirred by your presence. These are the bowls that learned it to speak, he continues. Or perhaps they never forgot how. You walk beneath them, your own calabash still warm in your hand. Its surface vibrates faintly, as if in recognition. One of the hanging bowls twitches on its thread. Another sings a single, bell-minus clear note, like a drop of honey falling onto wood. You ask if they're alive. He tilts his head. They remember being useful. And so, they wait to be useful again. He gestures toward a small clearing in the center of the grove, where a great tree rises with roots that form a natural bench. The trunk is gnarled, hollowed, and carved with spirals that seem to move if you stare too long. This tree, he says, once drank from a well that never ran dry. It grew wise. But instead of fruit, it began to grow silence. You ask what kind of silence? The kind that listens. You sit on one of the roots. Above you, several calabashes shift in the branches. One falls not abruptly, but like a feather. You catch it. It's smooth, pale, and cooler than the others. As you hold it, a memory flickers across your vision. You're standing in a kitchen, not your own, stirring soup you've never tasted. Someone sits nearby, humming. A child? A grandmother? You don't know. But the smell of dried shrimp and laughter feels familiar. The memory vanishes. The calabash in your hand vibrates once, then stills. You ask if it gave you that. The herbalist shakes his head. No. You gave it that. It only returned it with clarity. You glance at the one you carried here, the one warmed by that. It hums, too. You place them side by side on a rude bench. And for a moment, they resonate in harmony. Not music. Not quite. But alignment. The herbalist places a hand on your shoulder. Some say, he murmurs, that calabashes were the first musical instruments because they held breath before they held sound. You nod slowly. He continues. The ancestors whisper into them, still not to instruct, but to echo. When you've forgotten your own rhythm, they offer it back. You look around the grove. So many bowls. So many songs. You wonder what stories they contain. He sees your gaze. Would you like to listen to one? You nod. He walks to a lower Midas hanging Calabash, shady poker, one painted with fine lines that look like river deltas. He cups it with both hands, bows gently, then brings it close to your ear. You hear nothing at first. Then a whisper. Not in language, but in emotion. Regret that never hardened into bitterness. Love that was never declared aloud, but always lived. Gratitude that tried awkwardly to become words and failed beautifully. Tears rise and bind. You don't know whose they are. You don't need to. He returns the bow to its thread. Now it knows you heard it. Use it back. Your calabash glows a little brighter. It has spoken. Not yet. But it listens differently now. You lean against the wise tree. The herbalist doesn't speak. He just rests beside you, eyes closed. Above, the calabashes sway, their cords creaking softly like hammock ropes. World is settling into memory. The stars filter through the branches in tiny shards, falling on bark and bowl alike. You ask finally if every soul leaves behind a calabash. He considers. Not always in the physical, but in rhythm? Yes. You rest your hand on your own bowl again. You ask if it's ready to be sealed. He shakes his head gently. Not until it's whispered back. You look at him, confused. He smiles. The ancestors don't just leave messages. They wait for yours. You look into the bowl. Its surface is still. And then, slowly, you lean in. You don't know what you say, not with words. But something in your breath shifts, falls inward. Like offering a story to fire. The bow warms. And for the first time, hums back. The herbalist nods, please. No, he says, you can hang it. You look at the tree. You choose a branch, one not too high, not too central. You tie the cord with quiet care. Your calabash hangs still for a moment, then sways. A breeze rises barely there, but enough. Enough to carry the whisper upward. The bowl tilts, catches light, and sings. Just once. Clear. Low. Grateful. And then stills. You step back. The grove is quieter. Not empty. Just full in a new way. The herbalist bows. You bow in return. Your hands are empty. But nothing feels missing. You leave the grove slowly, your footsteps softened by moss that seems to cushion every step as if in approval. The calabash sway gently behind you, the breeze carrying one last chord of resonance before giving way to silence. The herbalist does not laid now. He walks beside you, as equals, as two who have offered and listened and released. The path curves again, narrower now, hemmed by low shrubs bearing pale blossoms that glow faintly in the dark. Some open only as you pass. Others remain closed, perhaps waiting for someone else's story. You arrive at a stone platform low, round, worn smooth by centuries of waiting. On it rests a single bowl of water. Clear. Still. And floating atop it folded leaves each inscribed with curling ink strokes. Some are faded. Others shine with fresh pigment. All of them bear names you do not recognize. This is the register of remembered offerings, the herbalist says, where the names that returned in truth are recorded. You ask, remembered by whom? He replies, by the market, by the rivers, by the children not yet born and the elders who still dream. Names are written here not because they were famous, but because they were offered freely. You approach. The bowl's surface is undisturbed. You glance in. No reflection again, only shimmering depth, like water sitting atop a mirror whose silver is forgetting how to separate light. He hands you a leaf blank, soft, freshly picked, and a brush. You hold them both, unsure. What should I write? You ask. He shrugs gently. What wants to be remembered not by the world, but by your spirit. You dip the brush. The ink appears of its own accord, dark, deep, like moonlight past their soil. And your hand begins to move. You write something, not a name, perhaps not even a word, but a pattern, a line, a code. When it is done, you entreat it. You place it upon the water. The leaf spins once, then settles. It does not sink. It does not float away. It becomes still. Another leaf joins it, carried by the wind, or perhaps dropped from nowhere. It bears a single mark, a spiral ending in a dot. You glance at the herbalist. He nods. That one came last season. A child whispered it during sleep. You smile. The bowl is not full. It never is. But it is complete in its incompletion. You ask what happens when the bowl fills. He whispers. Then the market shifts. A soul recognizes itself in another body. A river turns a different way. A fox returns with a new scent. That's enough. You remain by the bowl for a long time. Not out of hesitation, but because the stillness here feels like a gift. You think of your calabash now swinging in the grove. You think of the whisper you gave it, and realize the bowl of leaves is doing the same on another plane. A plane where souls are not measured by achievement but by quiet offerings. The herbalist walks to a low shelf nearby, set with stones etched in charcoal. One of them bears your mark, though you just made it. He doesn't explain. He doesn't need to. Sometimes, he says, we write what we've written before just from another angle. You glance again at the bowl. Now there are 3 more leaves. One reed. One gray. One striped with gold thread. You didn't see them arrive. He smiles. That's how it always is. which truly offered will always find a place here. You rise. The breeze returns. Soft. This time, it carries a scent you haven't noticed before: nutmeg or inch peel, earth after a warm rain. He turns toward the path once more. This time, your steps are even. Even your breath aligns. The bowl disappears behind you. Not into nothingness. Into memory. The memory of offering, not for reward, not even for remembrance. Just to give back a shape to the sky. You glance up. The stars feel closer. Or perhaps your eyes have grown calmer. The herbalist says nothing. But you know where you are going next. Where the offerings go when they choose to be forgotten. Where stories that no longer wish to be retold find their sleep. The place where silence becomes lineage. You walk. And the night hums softly, like a grandmother closing her eyes after telling one last story she never expected anyone to remember. The path grows thinner as you continue, vines brushing softly against your ankles, almost as if testing your resolve. You pass through a thicket where the trees lean toward one another like old friends gossiping in silence. The air is thick with humidity now, heavy but not oppressing, more like the breath of a forest remembering too much. Up ahead, the herbalist pauses at the edge of what seems to be a clearing, but you quickly notice it's not open air that awaits. It is a cave. A mound in the land, veiled with moss and the slow drip of water over time minus smooth stone. The sound is slow and steady, like the counting of years, or the soft echo of prayers never meant for answers. This is the Whispering Hollow, he says, where the ancestors store the offerings that weren't ever claimed. You step inside. The air is cooler here, and the light shifts, flickers like flame though no torches lit. The walls are uneven but layered in murals that shift when you look too long. Images of Calabash stacked and floating, of rivers crossed by shadowed figures, of hands held out, always reaching, never quite grasping. The floor crunches beneath your feet, not with debris, but with offerings hardened into foreign. Dried petals. Tiny scrolls. Braided grass tokens. Bits of fabric tied with hair. Each one carries a story. Each one was left, forgotten, misheard, or never retrieved. Not all prayers find their intended ear, he says. But no prayer is ever lost. You crouch beside a small bundle wrapped in faded blue silk. It trembles faintly when you touch it, as though still listening. You ask if these are failures. He shakes his head. Their future is still circling. Not all truths are ready to be received. You move further in. Some spaces are bare. Some overflow. There's one offering that looks untouched, fresh, as if left yesterday. A wooden comb, painted with ochre lines, resting atop an overturned clay bowl. What was that, you ask? He smiles softly. Someone asked to remember their mother's song. The song came. The memory didn't. So it waits. There is a kind of reverence here, not for perfection, but for effort. The effort to believe. The effort to speak. The effort to place something into the world without knowing where it will land. In one corner, a low bow still catches drops from the ceiling. You watch the ripples form, one after another. They say, he whispers, that if you listen long enough here, you can hear the Calabash in the ancestral realm echo what was missed. You listen. The sound is faint, but present. A pulse. Like a lullaby sung in a language you don't understand, but still trust. There's no pressure to translate here. No demand to resolve. just the presence of the unspoken. He leads you toward a central pillar carved with thousands of marks too small to read, but arranged in concentric spirals. You touch one mark at random. A rush of warmth enters your hand. A wordless feeling of longing, or maybe closure. You pull your hand back. This is the record of almost as, he explains. Wishes that came close to being fulfilled but bowed out with grace. You smile. Even the near layings are honored here. Even the dreams that paused halfway. You feel your own breath align with the hush in the cave. It no longer feels cool, it feels deep. Like a place between places. Like the comma between lifetimes. He steps toward the back wall now, where one single calabash sits on a ledge, enshrined. It's different. Split open slightly. And inside, instead of offerings or trinkets, there is light. Soft. Blue minus white. Pulsing gently. You whisper, "What is that one?" He tilts his head. No one remembers. And somehow, that makes sense. Some stories glow brightest when they are no longer claimed by one voice. He places a small tokenade, ride seed near its base. And then turns back to you. Are you ready to leave something behind? You think of all you've carried. The names. The regrets. The prayers whispered half minus aloud. You reach into your sleeve. And without looking, pull out the pouch you've forgotten until now. Inside a single folded leaf, long dried, marked with the scent of your own wondering. You set it beside the open calabash. And instantly, its eyes. A quiet exhale. Not of sadness. Of release. The herbalist bows not to you, not to the calabash, but to the air itself. The moment. The unseen witness. You follow suit. The cave does not change. The light does not brighten. But something inside you loosens. One thread of effort lets go. And all that remains is the awareness that you offered freely, fully, and without need for reply. You step out of the cave, leaving the hush intact. The forest air grates you again, scented with sage and soil. And behind you, the hollow continues its silent chorus of unclaimed devotion. Still singing. Still receiving. Still waiting for the stories that will never demand an ending. You walk through the trees in silence, your fingertips brushing the bark of the trunks till damp with evening dew. The hush of the whispering hollow follows you, not as a sound, but as an after-minus feeling, like the way your clothes remember warmth after you've stepped out of the sun. Ahead, the herbalist walks slowly. Not leading. Just accompanying. He stops at a spot where the forest thins in light, filters down in slender beams, soft as breath. In the center of this clearing stands a low stone table. On its ebon calabash bowls, each sealed with a different material wax, thread, resin, ash, honey, clay, and breath. You look at the last one, sealed with nothing but a veil of still air held in place by silence. These, the herbalist says, are ancestral vessels. Each holds a story passed down not in words, but in presence. You step closer. The one sealed with wax smells faintly a bitter Kolan-Citrus-Spiel. The thread minus bound one carries the scent of salted old pears. The honey minus sealed bowl glows faintly in the twilight, attracting a single moth that dances near its rim. These bowls, he says, are not for drinking or pouring. They are for listening. He picks up the bowl sealed with ash and places it gently before you. Try. You kneel and place your hands around it. The surface is cool, textured, like forgotten fire. You close your eyes, and slowly, something stirs, not sound, but a feeling. You are standing on a shoreline, not knowing which sea. Someone behind you is humming. You don't turn. You don't need to. The hum isn't a song. It's a memory taking shape. The ash carries it not as content, but as container, holding not the story, but the feeling of it. You open your eyes. He nods. They say each Calabash holds an emotion told to name. He moves to the one sealed with resin. This one holds a vision, he says, from a time when spirits still bartered in sleep. You touch it. Inside, you see a market, but it's not like any you've known. The stalls are made of shadow and dream. The vendors have no faces, only voices that echo like whispered memories. They offer items you cannot name: a folded breeze from a forgotten temple, a child's first word, never spoken aloud, the shape of a prayer interrupted. You reach for none of them. And still, you leave with something: the memory of wanting nothing and everything at once. Back in the clearing, the herbalist places the bowl down. Ancestral wisdom, he says, rarely arrives as advice. More often, it's the soft resistance when you're about to speak too harshly. The feeling that a hand once held yours in sleep. The dream that you never wrote down, but still remember. He picks up the clay minus sealed bowl. This one, he says, was sealed during a drought. It holds not water, but the longing for it. You smile. Even yearning has its place here. You hold the clay bowl. It's heavier. The kind of weight that feels like silence at a funeral, or the moment just before someone says, "I'm sorry." You listen. And what you hear isn't the message. It's the sensation of someone kneeling beside you, not speaking, just staying. The herbalist nods. Some ancestors only whisper in presence. You move to the bowl sealed with honey. It's sticky, glistening under the moonlight, now breaking through the canopy. You touch its rim, and sweetness rises, not taste, but memory. Laughter. A meal. Warmth. The gentle feeling of being safe enough to forget you're being watched over. You place it back, and the moth settles. Then he holds up the last bowl, the one sealed only with breath. Or rather, not sealed at all. This one, he says, you do not touch. You sit before it. The bowl is empty, but not vacant. You stare into it, and for a long moment, see nothing. Then, movement. Like the air itself exhaling in slow spirals. And then, a memory. You as a child, cupping your hands around a breeze just to pretend you were holding something real. Another. Someone brushing your hair, the feeling of being witnessed without need to perform. Then, an image you can't place. A Calabash bowl on someone's lap, beneath a tree with pale orange blossom. A woman holding it like an infant. A man whispering something into it before letting it float down a stream. No names. No narration. Just presence. This, the herbalist says, is what remains when all the stories dissolve. You let the feelings sink into your skin. And you understand. The ancestors are not behind you. Not above. Not below. They are in the exhale after a laugh. In the moment before a choice. In the memory that arises without prompting. You ask him finally what happens to the bowls when no one remembers them. He shrugs lightly. They keep listening. And sometimes, that's all that was ever needed. He begins placing the bowls back, one by one. You help him. Gently. Reverently. The clearing seems brighter now, though the sky has darkened. Something has shifted, not in the bowls, not in the air. In you. You feel held. Not by answers, but by the gentle truth that some questions don't seek conclusions. They only seek space. You rise and look once more at the bowls. Still. Silent. Complete. And somehow, you know you'll hear them again. Maybe in a dream. Maybe in a breeze. Maybe in the way your breath catches when you almost remember something you never learned. The clearing hushes behind you, the bowls resting in their places like slumbering mouths, having said all they needed to say, and now dreaming again. The herbalist brushes his hand along the moss-minus draped path, inviting you onward not with urgency, but with the gentle rhythm of one who knows the journey isn't over simply because the voice has quieted. You walk a little slower now, not from tiredness, but from a kind of rudida. Your feet move with the memory of the Calabash bowl, show they held presence instead of sound, how they whispered without breath. That kind of wisdom lingers in the body like steam after tea. Soon, you arrive at the banks of a quiet stream, its water dark but soft, catching bits of starlight and carrying them like forgotten names downstream. A single wooden bridge arcs over it low, unpainted, aged into silver by years of moonlight and rain. This, the herbalist says, is the stream of unspoken prayers. You blink. Not forgotten ones, he clarifies, but the ones that never found words. The stream doesn't rush. It glides. As if every drop carries almost an ache, a wish, a refusal, a hope that never became a sentence. He kneels beside the water and dips his fingers in. People think the ancestors only listen when we speak aloud. But often, it's the unsaid that resonates the longest. You crouch beside him, and the water smells faintly of crushed herbs and the recent rain, clean and weary at the same time. You may offer one, he says. If you like. You touch the surface with your fingers. The stream accepts you without ripple. No dramatic response. Just contact. And something inside you sighs, not in sorrow, not in joy. Just release. You think of something you once wanted to say to someone who's no longer here. Not a confession. Not even a memory. Just a tone, a truth that never reached your lips. You don't say it now either. But the stream hears. The herbalist smiles gently. In Yoruba traditions, he says, we often offer our silence alongside our word. Because silence remembers too. You both rise and begin walking the bridge. Beneath your feet, the water carries your unsaid wish away, not to vanish, but to soften. To become part of something larger than its longing. The bridge creaks slightly, not in protest, but like an old song stretching its chords. Halfway across, you notice something strange. Little folded leaves, each curled in the shape of a tongue, float slowly along the current. Some bear-marked symbols burned into them, or painted with crushed berry dye. Others are blank, but glow faintly when the moonlight catches them. You ask what they are. Wish vessels, the herbalist replies. Folded leaves from the garden of the sleeping herbs. He picks one gently from the water and places it in your palm. It is warm. You hold it without needing to know what it contains. He continues, some say the Orishas carry these to the realms beyond. Others say they simply dissolve when they're no longer needed. You watch the other leaves float onward. A few dip beneath the surface for a moment, only to reappear downstream. A quiet, strange thought drifts through your mind. Maybe no wish is ever truly lost. Maybe they just become streams for others to cross. You reach the far side of the bridge, where the path becomes a series of flat stones. They guide you through a grove of slender trees, whose trunks bear carvings in languages you don't know and yet somehow understand. The herbalist pauses and places his palm against one of the trees. They say trees once served as librarians, he murmurs. They didn't write books. They stored tone, frequency, mood. He steps back and nods at the trunk. You place your palm where his had been. A low hum greets you, not musical, not even vocal. Just an emotional temperature. Like standing in the echo of someone's last whispered forgiveness. Or the warmth of a smile that never needed explanation. You remove your hand, and the feeling stays. The herbalist walks again, slower now, as if the air has thickened with meaning. Eventually, you reach a cluster of stone seats surrounding a circular fire pit. The pit is cold, filled only with ashen wood and bird turb tied with red thread. This is where ancestral disputes were resolved, he says, not with words but with stillness. He invites you to sit. You do. The air holds its breath. You realize something of fire was never needed. Only the circle. A place for presence, for pause, for witnessing. The herbalist touches the herb, cradles it in both hands, and gently places it into the ash. No flames come, but a scent rises. Pine, bitter koa, a trace of rain minus soap bark, and memory. He closes his eyes. You do too. In the stillness, you hear something not outside, but within. The quiet click of choices never made. The soft rustle of paths you almost walked. The breath of someone who forgave you in silence. The sound of a heart not breaking, just rearranging. You open your eyes. He opens his. The scent has faded, but its meaning has. You rise. The stone seats say nothing, but somehow you feel seen. As if the air now carries your echo, not loudly, not forever. Just long enough. Long enough to be heard by the right silence. You and the herbalist begin walking again. Neither of you speak. And yet the world around you listens with the patience of rivers. With the calm of bowls that whisper only when the listener forgets their question. The grove behind you fades like the hush after a lullaby. Its carved trees enfolded, wishes trailing in the silence, becoming part of the forest breath. You walk onward with the herbalist, and the path beneath your feet turns soft moss giving way to sand, and sand eventually to woven matting that crackles faintly as you step. The moon is overhead now, white and calm, a low Midas hanging silvered rum in the sky. Before you lies a long, narrow hole open on both sides, but roofed with thatch and hung with tail musnims that click gently in the wind. No was. Only wind and shadow and breath. This is the hall of divining dust, the herbalist says. A place where ancestors speak not in words, but in powder. He gestures toward a small platform near the center, where a flat clay sits, half mine is covered in soft, golden earth. You approach it slowly. The powder doesn't look like any sand you've seen. It shimmers like someone ground down sunlight into a fine, weightless dust. Yoruba bubble all us, he says. Use sacred palm nuts to cast patterns into this dust. The patterns weren't the answers, they were the voices of Ora Millet, the spirit of wisdom. He holds up a tiny bundle wrapped in cloth inside. You glimpse 16 small palm kernels, smooth and dark. They were dropped, shaken, sung to, he continues, and their shapes interpreted, not to predict but to illuminate. He kneels and gently scatters a handful of dust across the tray, then pours the palm nuts into your cupped hands. They've been used by many before you, he murmurs. They know how to listen. You close your eyes. Shake. Release. The nuts stumble into the dust with a soft clatter. When you open your eyes again, you see nothing spectacular. No symbols you recognize. No glowing signs. Only gentle lines where the nuts pushed the dust, where curves met corners, where fir kernels huddled close while the others drifted apart. The herbalist leans closer, observing. Then smiles. There, he says, pointing to a small crescent line made by the fall of one nut. A gentle return. You look again. Just a curve. But you feel something shift in your chest. Like a tide turning. The ancestors say we ask the same question over many lifetimes, he says softly. Sometimes the pattern is just the shape of how long we've been listening. You exhale slower now. He takes the kernels back, wraps them gently, and places them beside the tray. Then he smooths the dust flat with his hand, erasing the marks. You blink. They're gone. All this forgets, he says. That's what makes it sacred. You both rise and step from the platform. Further down the hall, you see a line of Calabash bowls again, but smaller, each holding colored chalk, little wooden sticks, and dry leaves folded into symbols. This is where children were once brought, he explains, to let them draw the lives they remember. You tilt your head. They were given dust and chalk, he continues, told to draw their favorite tree or the market they missed. Some would draw a river. Some would draw hands they hadn't held yet. You kneel beside one of the bowls and lift a thin stick from it. The chalk is pale blue cool in your fingers, soft as memory. You hesitate, then begin to draw. Not with purpose, not with understanding, just with rhythm. A spiral, a small dot at its center. A shape that might be a bridge, or a bowl, or a leaf falling sideways. The herbalist watches. Says nothing. When you finish, the chalk slips from your hand. The image stays. But not forever. A breeze stirs the dust. The lines begin to blur. You don't mind. Perhaps the dust remembers what you forget. Perhaps that's the point. You rise and continue down the hall. Hanging from the beams now are old bells worn in mismatch. None ring by wind. These are the bells of unheard names, the herbalist explains. They sound only when someone speaks a truth too quietly for the world. You pause beside one. Its surface bears etchings in deep spirals. Your fingers hover near it, not to ring, but to wonder. He offers you a story. There was once a young woman, he says, who sat beneath one of these bells every day, whispering things no one else heard. Her grief, her joy, her hunger for answers. One day, as she was leaving, the bell rang. You wait. He continues. She hadn't touched it. No wind. No movement. Just sound. Clear and deep. A truth had ripened. You glance up. Some truths bloom slowly. Maybe yours isn't ready to ring yet. Maybe it already has and you didn't notice. You work on. The path becomes narrow again. At its end is a shallow bowl of water, still, dark, rimmed with tiny feathers. The last ritual before dreams, the herbalist says, is to see if your spirit has softened. You lean over the bowl. See your reflection. But it's not the face you wear. It's a softness you've grown. You dip your fingers in. No ripple forms. Only quiet. And a faint scent hibiscus ash, and something like home. You don't speak. The bowl doesn't reply. But something in the stillness says, you are becoming forgettable to yourself. And that is peace. You rise, and the herbalist places a small feather in your palm. It is not a token. It is a suggestion. To move lightly. To carry less. To remember only what remains after the forgetting. The feather in your palm barely weighs a thought. Yet it changes how your fingers close, how your arm rests at your side. As if the act of holding something so light has taught your body how to be gentler. The herbalist says nothing. He doesn't need to. The bowl, the dust, the chalk, none asked for conclusions. Only presence. You walk with him into a grove where the trees wear robes of bark that look hand-woven. Lanterns hang from their limbs not lit, just softly reflecting the moon's pulse through a thin cloth. The wind here is kind. You feel it brushing past you, carrying with it the scent of roasted Yamant River clan smoke from long minus extinguished altars. At the center of the grove sits a ring of small stools, each one carved with a different face. Some are smiling. Some weeping. Some are expressions that could be either, depending on the angle. One has no face at all, just an indentation, as if the wood itself was waiting for a story to shape it. This is where ancestors return for quiet visits, the herbalist says. Not in form. In mood. You take a seat on one of the stools. The one that smiles with downcast eyes. He remains standing. Do you know the custom of offering breath? He asks gently. You shake your head. In some Yoruba villages, he says, when a person dies, their loved ones gather near the body not only with tears or songs, but with silence. One by one, they sit beside the departed and exhale, just once into the air, as if giving the soul a little wind to lift it upward. You look up. The lanterns are still, but the trees seem to lean closer. He continues. Tonight, you're not mourning, but you are shedding. So let's offer breath. You inhale through your nose. Exhale slowly through your lips. The air leaves your mouth like mist into winter. You offer nothing concrete. Just exhale. A leaf detaches from one of the trees and floats down. And for a moment, it seems to fall in time with your breath. You both wait. There is no commentary. No spiritual pat on the back. Only the feeling that something just finished, gently. He moves to the edge of the grove and lifts a bundle wrapped in cloth. Unfolding it reveals a small wooden mask, painted in the old way earth ochre and cobalt blue, with thin white lines tracing spirals around the eyes. This was once worn during the Igangan festival, he explains, when the ancestors are invited to walk among the living. He holds it towards you not to wear, but to hold. You take it. The wood is warm. Not from sun. From memory. You turn it slowly in your hands. The mask's gaze isn't stern or knowing. It's quiet. Like someone who's already heard your stories more than once and still listens as if it's the first telling. He steps away, giving you space. The air hums faintly, as if spirits are shuffling their robes nearby. You look into the mask's carved eyes, and you remember. A market stall with painted gourds. A woman's hands sifting through red beans. A small girl humming while tying a string around a straw dough. Were they memories? Or gifts from the mask? Or perhaps, as the herbalist might say, a bit of both. You set the mask down. The earth seems to accept it like a folded letter. He approaches once more, placing a single cowrie shell in your palm. The old ones say each shell holds the laughter of an ancestor, he says. It's not meant to be understood. Just carried. You nod. And as you rise, the stool exhales under you just slightly. As if saying, thank you for sitting. The herbalist guides you out of the grove, and ahead lies a path lit by fireflies. But they do not flit about randomly. They seem to hover in formation circles, lines, the rough shape of symbols you've seen earlier tonight. These lights, he says, are not insects. Not truly. They're the flickers of moments that changed someone's life, caught in the N- between. You stop walking. Watch one settle near your wrist. It pulses once, twice, then fades. You do not feel loss, only a soft tap on the shoulder of memory. You might have passed one of your own, the herbalist says quietly. A moment you never knew mattered. The trail curves toward a stream. Small, narrow, but moving like it remembers being a river once. A bridge crosses it no more than a few planks bound with vine. You pause at its edge. He doesn't speak, but you understand. This bridge isn't for leaving. It's for continuing. You step onto it, and each board beneath your foot sings a slightly different note. A tune you almost recognize. You reach the other side. Turn. He is still there. Not crossing. Just watching. Then he bows. And vanishes. Not dramatically. Just like mist returning to breath. You do not call out. You do not hurry back. You walk forward. And the air becomes simpler. The scent of ancestors' and wood smoke fades. But something else remains. A cowrie shell in your pocket. A carved mask in your memory. And a breath you offered once, with no expectation of return. The path you follow now feels softer than before, like the earth itself has decided to hold you a little closer. You don't rush. There's no reason to. The fireflies from the grove have lingered, forming a gentle trail of flickering guidance not urgent, just there when you glance up. They shimmer like the thoughts you never said aloud, or the dreams you almost remembered upon waking. Around you, the trees thin out, replaced by small earthen shrines. Each one looks handmade, formed from clay, river stones, bundles of dry grass. Some have little figurines inside. Some hold fruit in varying stages of ripeness, and others are left completely bare. You realize these are not altars in the usual sense. They are placeholders for wishes that were once whispered, then forgotten. The herbalist isn't beside you anymore, but you still feel guided. You stop in front of a shrine shaped like a tilted bull, pressed into the dirt. Inside it 5 smooth pebbles, a single feather, and an old bead strung on twine. You don't know who left them. You don't need to. The shrine doesn't ask you to understand. It simply invites you to witness. You crouch beside it. Touch the ram of the bowl with your fingertips. It's cool, damp from evening mist. And just as you begin to rise, you hear it. A voice not external, not your own. More like a hum that began before you existed. It says, "Thank you for remembering what was left behind." You don't know which part of you receives this. The soul? The silence between thoughts. Either way, you carry it now. You walk a little farther and find yourself at a resting platform, made flat stone ringed with woven mats, surrounded by vessels filled with herbs, oil, and soft bundles of cloth. One mat has already been unrolled. You sit upon it. Laid before you is a calabash bowl, wider than any you've seen so far. Empty, but not hollow. It seems to vibrate slightly, as though something inside is preparing to arrive. A breeze passes, and with it comes the scent of something sweet and old, like tamarind soaked in memory, or rain that once fell during a funeral procession. The bowl shifts. Inside it, patterns begin to emerge, ripples in the wood grain that weren't visible before. You watch them spiral inward, and then outward again. A whisper rises, one you cannot place. You lean closer, and the bowl begins to speak. Not in language, not in sound, but in moment. You see a woman lighting a candle for a child she never got to hold. A man walking backward into a river, leaving no footprints. A boy carrying a bird cage with no bird inside but a song still echoing. The calabash holds these memories without ownership. They are not its memories. Not yours. Just stories paused mid-sentence. You place your hand over the rim and feel something return. Not to you, through you. As though you've become the last wall before a forgotten echo fades completely. The bowl stills. The images fade. But you remain, changed slightly, as if someone nodded quietly from behind your spine. Then, a small object rolls to the side of the bowl. You pick it up. A charm, shaped like a spiral, carved from bone. You remember a story perhaps told earlier tonight about the Yoruba belief in Ori, the soul's inner head, its destiny minus seat. When a person forgets their Ori, it is said they walk in fog even under sunlight. You don't feel forgotten. Not anymore. You tuck the charm into your sash. Rise slowly, and the bowl seems to hum in farewell. The moon above is different now, lower, fuller, casting light like an old friend leaning closer to whisper. You take a step forward and feel the charm pulse once. Then silence again. Ahead, the path narrows into a kind of corridor made of hanging cloths. Deep indigo, soft russet, smoky ivory, all dyed with natural pigments, moving slightly in the wind. You push one aside, and the scent of old incense drifts out. Inside, a round room made entirely of woven reeds. No roof. The stars above feel especially near. In the center sits a woman with gray braids coiled atop her head like ceremonial snakes. She does not look up. She is tracing a spiral into the earth with her fingertip. When she speaks, her voice is older than firewood. You've carried a lot of silence tonight. You nod. She still does not look at you. Sit. You do. The ground beneath you is warm, like a hearth just finished telling a story. She stops tracing. Looks at you now. Her eyes are not kind. They are remembering. That bowl you held earlier, she says. We used to whisper into calabashes before war. You wait. We'd fill them with breath, fold the top with cloth, and leave them beneath our beds. Some say that's where courage came from. Others say that's how ghosts stayed out. She chuckles. But we all whispered. You ask her what they whispered. She shrugs. Anything that didn't belong in the body anymore. You nod. She hands you a bowl. Smaller. Cracked at the edge. Still strong. Go ahead, she says. One whisper. You lean close. Close your eyes. And say nothing with your lips. But your breath speaks. And the bull catches it like a prayer to soft for temples. You pass it back. She places a stone on top. Seals it. Sets it beside others, some cracked, some glowing faintly. You'll forget this, she says. But your breath won't. She stands. Disappears through the curtain of cloth. And you remain for one more moment, watching the sealed bulls. Not out of curiosity, but respect. Then you rise. Leave quietly. And somewhere inside you, the breath you offered curls softly into sleep. The curtain sways gently behind you as you step back into the garden's breath. It no longer feels like a space made of paths and plants. It feels like a memory being dreamed by the land itself. Each leaf, each scent, each hush is a part of some slow exhale you've joined mid-minus breath. Your feet find a mossy trail lined with softly glowing shells, pale green, iridescent, each one no larger than a fingernail. You recognize them. These are not for beauty, but for remembering. In Yoruba belief, Orishas are more than currency, they're voices. The voice of the sea. The voice of ancestors. The voice of fate measured in soft curves. You walk among them like someone tiptoeing across a whispered sentence. Eventually, the path opens into a clearing where stones form a spiral. In the center, seated on a mat of raffian palm, is an elder whose presence feels like dusk made visible. His robe is earth minus colored and patchy, stitched with symbols only the wind seems to understand. Before him rests a large Calabash bowl, filled not with herbs or water, but tiny, weathered cowries. Hundreds of them. Without speaking, he gestures for you to sit across from him. You do. His eyes, dark and unblinking, drift toward the bowl. This is the OD you shall spiral, he says after a long pause. Every shell remembers one wish spoken by someone who never knew how to ask properly. He picks up one quarry and holds it to his ear like a child listening for the ocean. Some people whisper sideways into the world, he adds, voice soft as ash. They don't think the Orishas hear them. But they do. And the shells do too. He places the quarry back into the bowl and stirs the collection slowly. A few shells jump slightly, barely noticeable. But you see it. He invites you to reach in. You hesitate. He nods. Choose the one that warms to you. You reach. Fingers move carefully. Not by logic, but by presence. One shell grows warm beneath your touch. You bring it out. It's nothing extraordinary to look at. Faded. Chipped. Slightly cracked at one edge. But when you hold it near your chest, you hear something. Like a question. Like someone hoping their name has been forgotten. You ask the elder whose wish this was. He smiles faintly. The shell may not say. Not all wishes want to be found. You cradle the shell in both hands. You wonder if you've heard this voice before, maybe in a child's laugh, or a stranger's sigh, or your own hesitation when reaching for something once lost. You remember the tale of Oran Malay, the diviner of fate, who spoke to shells before speaking to people. Who taught that truth doesn't live in answers but in how questions are offered. You press the shell gently to the earth beside you. The elder nods. That one is ready to be returned. A breeze swirls across the spiral, and a few shells clink together softly. He begins humming low and slow, like a song meant only for the soil. You listen. Not for words, but for the way silence reshapes itself around melody. When the song ends, he reaches into the bowl and pulls out a different shell. This one glows faintly. Some shells, he explains, don't hold wishes. They hold warnings. Echoes of choices never made, roads never taken. He sets it before you. A memory stirs in your mind, a fork in a path, a letter never sent, a conversation you meant to start but waited too long. The shell vibrates slightly. He covers it with a small cloth. Not every truth needs to be named, he says. Some just want to be held for a moment. You nod. He stands slowly. His knees crack with the sound of old trio hymns adjusting at twilight. Take one with you, he says. Let it hum when you need to remember what your spirit once promised before entering this life. You reach into the bowl one last time. This time, you choose without hesitation. The shell feels like a question mark folded into a lullaby. You tuck it into your pocket beside the spiral charm from the earlier bowl. The elder walks you toward the edge of the spiral. Just before you part ways, he says, the Orishas never stop listening. They only wait for us to whisper differently. You look back at the bowl of shells, still glimmering beneath starlight. One shell tilts slightly on its own, as though acknowledging your gaze. You walk on, carrying 3 whispers, now the bowl minus sealed breath, the spiral of destiny, in a shell that hums when silence forgets how to feel full. Ahead, a lantern glows, not fire, not flame. Just quiet amber warmth, resting on a branch like a fruit waiting to ripen. You pause beneath it. Not to ask. Not to answer. Just to feel the stillness as it wraps itself around you, like old fabric that remembers who last wore it. Somewhere deeper in the garden, a bell rings once. La. Rounding. Final, but only for now. You breathe it in. The shell in your pocket pulses once, like it knows where you're headed. And still, no hurry. No question. Just presence. The bell fades as you walk beyond the glade of shells, your footsteps no louder than a hush inside a dream. The ground beneath you softens, still moss, but deeper now, almost plush. It cushions you like something welcoming your way without asking why you come. The air changes again. It smells of palm wine and wood smoke, of rain minus washed gorge, and distant drumming heard only by bones. You arrive at a small circular platform made of pressed earth and stone. Around its edge are 10 Calabash bowls, each one different, some deep and dark as night water, others pale and dry as dried papaya skin. In their center, small tokens. Nothing grand. A thorn feather. A folded cloth. A blue bead. A tooth. An old woman tends them. Her back is curved, not with age alone, but with memory. The kind of memory that doesn't speak unless the night is quiet enough to hold it. She turns to you with a soft sound, not words, but more like a breeze through dry maize. These are the listening bowls, she says, where the ancestors place what they cannot say aloud. Use it across from her. The Calabashes seem to vibrate slightly, as though aware of being observed. She picks up one light tan with 3 rings carved along the rim. Inside rests a strip of leather, curled like a sleeping worm. This one, she explains, holds a wish that was never spoken. A father's hope. A son's doubt. A dream so shy, it only breathed once. She places it back and lifts another. This bowl is dark, nearly black, but smooth and oiled with care. Inside, a single button thread still caught in its loop. This one is grief, she says simply. Someone passed before finishing a story. The ending still floats in their breath. So the bowl keeps it for them. You glance around. 10 bows. 10 echoes. You ask if they ever answer back. She nods. They dare. But not with words. With alignment. You tilt your head. She smiles. You'll see. She invites you to choose a bowl. Not for touching. For listening. You close your eyes. The world draws in. And slowly, one bowl pulls forward, not with movement, but with attention. You feel it. A low hum in your chest. Your fingertips tingle. You point. She nods. The bowl is small and plain, cracked near the base and repaired with a thin gold resin. Inside, a piece of torn parchment. Faded. Stained with something that might be ink or maybe rain. You lean in. It doesn't speak, but it pulses. A steady, silent beat like a heartbeat beneath soft fabric. She says, this one remembers something you almost forgot. You ask, from this life? She shrugs. Or another. Some memories don't check which body they enter. You sit with it. The calabash warms slowly in the soil. The air tightens not in fear, but in focus. And then you feel it. A memory. You are a child not here, not now. Somewhere open, with wind and salt and the scent of fish in the morning. You sit beside an older woman as she carves a design into a bowl just like this. She hums a tune you still can't name. And she tells you when you don't know what to say, speak into the calabash. It remembers, even when you forget. The memory fades. The bowl grows still. You open your eyes. The old woman is watching. Not smiling. Not judging. Just present. She asks, would you like to speak into it now? You hesitate. Then lean forward. And whisper not a confession, not a poem. Just the truth you've been carrying without wrapping. It's not long. It's not polished. But it's yours. The bowl hums in response. Not approval. Not agreement. Just acknowledgement. She seals the parchment with a string of blue beads and places it back inside. Now it will listen for you, even when you forget how to ask. You nod. The night deepens. She picks up another bowl, this one full of dried flower petals. These are dreams people were afraid to claim. She tosses a few petals into the air. They float like slow ash, dissolving before they touch ground. No dream truly disappears, she murmurs. Some just wait for someone else to dream them again. You think of a vision you once had. A place. A task. A song. Left behind because it didn't feel like the right time. Maybe it washed yours. Maybe it was just your turn to carry it a little farther. You rise slowly. The bows don't move. But one whispers in your pocket. You didn't place anything there. And yet, something presses lightly against your leg. You reach down. A small carved bead. Warm. Familiar. Not yours. But meant for you. She says nothing. Just nods. You walk on. Toward the last turn in the garden. The part where bowls become echoes, and echoes become breath. And breath becomes the only story you've ever really told. One exhale at a time. The bead still rests in your hand as you leave the circle of listening bowls, its tiny carved spiral pressing gently into your skin. You don't recall when it was placed there, or by whom. Perhaps it's always been with you, just waiting to be noticed like a truth that only makes itself known when you finally become still enough to feel it. The garden bends once more, as if reshaping itself around your breath. Each step carries a new softness, like stepping on folded cloth through moonlight. The air smells of old prayers, faintly spicy, a little bitter, and undeniably warm. Ahead, a slumped clearing opens. Low fireflies drift like candle spirits, weaving through tall grasses in between pale stones shaped like river teeth. And at the far end, lit by a glow that feels more remembered than cast, sits a shrine made of weathered wooden palm rope. It's small, unassuming. No door. No offerings yet. Just an empty Calabash bowl at its center, surrounded by 4 unlit candles placed at the compass points. You pause. The herbalist appears beside you, not with footsteps, but like a thought forming into presence. His robe rustles, like leaves in windless trees. He gestures to the bowl. Now we ask. You sit cross-legged before it. The bowl is empty, yet full of invitation. It smells faintly of coconut and sun minus heated clay. A thread of incense curls nearby soft, like the end of a sigh. You may whisper into the Calabash, the herbalist says. But not with words. You tilt your head. He continues, some questions are too large for the mouth. Some are better spoken by stillness. You inhale slowly. The night holds its breath with you. And you do nothing. You simply sit. Palms on knees. Spine long but relaxed. Eyes lowered to the bowl. No wind stirs. No voice arrives. But the Calabash hums, like a drum waiting to be remembered. In Yoruba cosmology, Calabash bowls are sacred vessels used to carry water, food, medicine, and sometimes the voice of ancestors. Some believe they're shaped to match the dome of the sky and the arc of the belly. Life begins in a bowl, they say, and one day it returns to one. You watch as a faint shimmer forms inside, silver like fish scales, slow like sleep. Not light. Not liquid. More like suggestion. Images appear in your mind, uninvited and yet welcomed, a child laughing beside a river you've never seen. An elder cracking cola nuts beneath a tree that no longer grows in this world. A mask being lifted not in fear, but in revelation. You blink, and they remain. The herbalist says nothing, but one candle ignites. No flame touched it. No match. No spark. It simply decides to burn. North, he whispers. You nod, though you don't know what that means yet. Then another candle catches on the opposite side. South, he murmurs. Then the third. West. The final candle waits. Long enough for you to wonder. Then, with a sigh like a closing story, it joins the circle. East, it says at last. The bowl shimmers brighter now. Not dazzling. Just the weight. You reach toward it. but your hand hovers, not touching, just offering. And the bowl answers. You don't hear words, but your heartbeat shifts, falls into step with something slower, deeper. It's not your question that's being answered. It's your presence that's being received. Sometimes, the ancestors don't need us to ask. They simply need us to arrive. You think of all the times you rushed past this kind of moment in waking life, when you stood at the sink too tired to feel the water, or stared at your phone while the breeze tried to tell you something. But not tonight. Tonight you arrive. A sudden warmth spreads across your chest, not from outside, but from within. Like memory lighting a candle somewhere deep in your ribcage. And the calabash glows in response. This, the herbalist finally says, is not prophecy. You nod. This is not healing. You breathe. This is remembrance. And suddenly, the bowl ends not into silence, but into rest. The images fade, like fireflies sinking below the grass. You blink. You're still here. Still yourself. But a little wider. A little softer. He gestures for you to stand. You do. He picks up the bowl, walks toward the shrine, places it back at the center. The 4 candles flicker once, then extinguish together. The circle closes, and you realize the bowl never needed your question. It just needed your willingness to arrive without one. As you step away, the grass whispers beneath your feet. The night resumes its rhythm. Crickets begin their song again. A breeze stirs your sleeve, as if in gentle applause. And in your hand, the bead still rests. You don't know if you'll keep it, or pass it on. But for now it stays. A reminder that sometimes the ancestors whisper not to answer, but to remind you that you've never really been walking alone. You look back once. The shrine is already fading into the landscape. Not disappearing, just returning. Like everything else in this garden. You walk on. The night ahead is long, and rich with stories that have waited lifetimes to be listened to. The path narrows again, not from constraint, but from invitation. Like a story drawing you close for its final chapters. You step forward, your feet moving quietly across moss that seems to breathe beneath your steps. Behind you, the shrine dissolves into shadow and memory. Ahead, something glimmers softly, a series of hanging cloths strung between the crooked trees. They're not flags exactly. Not banners. More like garments of wind. Each strip is hand-midas dyed, hand-midas stitched. Some with faded embroidery, others with tiny bells sewn at the corners. They rustle not from breeze, but from recognition, as if they remember you even if you don't remember them. The herbalist smiles gently. This is the corridor of inherited names, he says, stepping to one side. We pass through it so that the stories carried in our bones may loosen their grip. You nod, not needing further instruction. The first cloth you brush against smells of ashen drain. The second salt and stone. One is frayed, with the pattern of a bird stitched along the hem. Another feels newer, though its colors have already begun to fade. With each one you pass, a sound seems to trail behind a low note, then a laugh, then something like an old lullaby in a language you've never spoken, but somehow understand. In Yoruba cosmology, names are not merely identifiers. They're echoes. Some are gifted. Some are inherited. Some arrive unspoken, living in the space between what is said and what is meant. Children born with a returning spirit for instance, often receive names like Babbitt and or yet, unsignaling that a grandfather or mother has returned through them. You pass one cloth with this name stitched boldly across its surface. A Benny, we asked for her, and she came. You pause. The cloth flutters once. You feel a weight lift from behind your eyes, not sadness, not memory. Just the recognition of something long carried. Perhaps it was never yours. Perhaps it belonged to a great Midas and you never met, or a child you never became. But it has traveled with you. And now, the wind reclaims it. You move forward. One cloth has no name at all, only a spiral stitched in dull red thread. You touch it, and suddenly remember the moment you stood in the middle of a market as a child, sensing a stall before seeing it, one where no goods were sold, but everyone stopped to breathe. You never spoke of it. No one else seemed to notice. But the spiral knows. Names, after all, are only tools. And tools must sometimes be laid down to become hands again. You reach the end of the corridor. The final cloth is pure white, with a single black bead sewn at the center. It does not move, but it hums faintly, the way mountain air does just before snow. You bow to it not in ritual, but in quiet acknowledgement, and step through. The path opens. You find yourself at the edge of a shallow pool, lit from below by small sunstones buried in the sand. The water is perfectly still, except for the concentric circles that ripple out from the center. There is no breeze here. The ripples come from something else. The herbalist kneels beside the water, motioning for you to do the same. This pool remembers the names you've outgrown, he says. It stores them. Not to bind you, but to keep them safe, should you ever wish to visit them again. You nod, your reflection shimmering in the pale light. He draws a thin reed from his sleeve and dips it into the pool. The circles shift, deepen, settle. Then a face appears. Not yours. A young boy with wide eyes and a dimple you've seen before in a dream, or perhaps a photograph yellowed with age. He smiles, then fades. A woman appears next, stern but kind, wearing earrings shaped like little suns. Her name hovers just beyond memory. You whisper it anyway. And the ripples widen. Others come, lives you may have lived, names you may have worn. Each face passes like a leaf on water. None of them demand recognition. None ask you to stay. They simply offer presence. Somewhere nearby, you hear the faint sound of a drum not played but remembered. It matches the rhythm of your heartbeat. You look into the pool once more, and this time, see yourself not now, but younger. A version of you who once asked too many questions in silence, who once feared they would forget everything sacred if they stopped trying to remember. You reach for them, not to pull them forward, but to wave. They wave back and vanish. The herbalist dips the reed once more and lays it on the sand. Now, he says, we give your current name to the water, not to lose it, but to let it breathe. You hesitate. Not from fear, but from awe. You whisper it. The pool does not echo. It receives. And then for just a moment you'll hear your name spoken back. But not in your voice. In the voice of the wind through leaves, in the voice of water tracing stone, in the voice of a grandmother humming beside a candle-lit bowl. And then silence. A silence that blesses. A silence that frees. You rise slowly. Lighter now. Or perhaps just clearer. The herbalist takes your hand not tightly, but like someone touching the rim of a bell to feel if it still vibrates. It is time, he says softly. You don't ask for what. Some part of you already knows. The path continues. But now, there are no more cloths. No more candles. Just the night. And your feet. And the sky blooming with quiet stars. Each one a question never asked. Each one a name never spoken. Each one shining just the same. You walk beneath those quiet stars now, the ones that do not insist, do not name, do not call out for stories. They simply glow. Steady. Present. Like ancestors who have watched every version of you become undone become. The air is different here. Thinner, but not empty. As if something is making room. Or has already made it. The herbalist does not lead anymore. He walks beside you. Like someone who's handed over the map and trusts your feet to know the rest. Ahead, nestled between two large stones, is a Calabash bowl. Its shape is humble, but its presence is not. Around it, the ground has been swept clean intentionally. Not to erase, but to receive. This is where the whispers land, he says. Where the prayers go when no one remembers they were spoken. You kneel. The bowl is shallow. Unadorned. Empty at first glance. But as you lean in, your breath moves across its curve, and you see them the smallest traces of sound. Dust stirred in the spiral. Condensation that forms the edge of a syllable. And a faint shimmer that feels watched. Yoruba cosmology teaches that ancestors do not leave. They observe. They wait. They intervene only when invited, and, even then, only if the tone is right. Offerings made. Names remembered. Or, in some rare cases, when a soul kneels in silence without expectation. You do not speak. You listen. At first, it sounds like nothing. Then, like memory underwater. Then, like a breeze through reeds. Then, like your own voice from another lifetime saying, I am still here. And that's when you notice the bowl is not resting on the ground. It's resting on a folded piece of cloth. You pull it out slowly. Its old, worn edges burn slightly as if from ritual. On its surface is a single line of embroidery in fading thread. Return only when you've forgotten what you were supposed to become. The herbalist says nothing. He only sits down beside you and places another bowl beside yours. This one is full. Inside feathers, broken beads, half-minus burnt herbs, and the ash of paper prayers. These, he murmurs, are the offerings no one came back to collect. You look at the ash. It glows faintly like embers long cooled, but still remembering fire. Each piece belonged to a question someone couldn't bear to carry anymore. So they gave it to the wind, to the ancestors, to the quiet. And the bow held it up. You touch the rim gently. A whisper rises, not out loud, but inside. What will you leave here? You pause. So many names. So many worries. So many times you wish to be different, not because you didn't love yourself, but because you hadn't yet met the version of you who could. You place a single thought in the bowl. It doesn't follow. It dissolves. That's the thing about these Calabash bowls. They don't collect. They transmute. Old Yoruba wisdom says that ancestors whisper into Calabash bowls, not to give instructions, but to stir the air just enough for you to remember what you already knew. You place your hand over the first bowl, the empty one, and you whisper not a question, but a thank you. The bowl shivers once. and stills. The herbalist closes his eyes. In the distance, a soft sound begins like stones clicking together, like beads poured slowly into a wide hand. You realize it's not far. It's coming from just beyond the stones. You and the herbalist rise together and walk toward it. There, seated on a low wooden bench, is a woman wrapped in layered cloth. Her face is veiled, but not hidden. You feel seen before you are even close enough to bow. At her feet many bowls. Some clay, some metal. One carved from gourd. One, you swear, made from mist held in form. She does not speak. She gestures to the empty one in front of you. You kneel again. She produces a single cowrie shell from a pouch and drops it into the bowl. It lands with a sound that echoes longer than physics should allow. Then another. And another. Each sound seems to touch a different part of your memory. The first makes you recall a hand holding yours on the first day of a journey. The second day, if you forgot, belonged to you. The third day, stillness you have yet to meet. Cowrie shells in Yoruba tradition are not merely currency. They're conduits. They hold the language of oceans, of ancestors, of divination. In the hands of a skilled priestess or diviner, they don't just answer questions, they realign your compass. You don't ask her anything. You don't need to. The final shell lands with a softness that feels like dusk arriving. The bowl sings once, and you close your eyes. In that darkness, you are many people. A child who placed her ear against the earth to hear stories. A merchant who bartered silence for wisdom. A grandmother who left only one possession, a worn wooden spoon carved with a moon. You are all of them. And none of them. And this bowl remembers each. The woman rises. She turns slowly and walks into the dark. Her bowls vanish with her. The herbalist exhales softly. That was the final whisper, he says. You both look back toward the Calabash bowl resting in the grass. It glows now. Not brightly. Just enough to remind the sky that something sacred passed through. And the sky, as if acknowledging the offering, begins to sprinkle a soft mist. You feel it on your face. Not rain. Not dew. Just the gentle breath of a night that's almost ready to sleep. You bow once more. Not to the herbalist. Not to the bulls. But to the space between breath and forgetting. Then you rise. And follow the mist. Toward the final path, the mist folds around you like a shawl woven from breath and memory. It doesn't obscure your vision, it softens it. The path ahead is not lit, but felt. Each step doesn't echo, it hums, faintly, as if the earth beneath your feet recognizes the rhythm of your return. You no longer need the herbalist to guide you. But he walks beside you still, his presence no longer instructive, just companioned like a quiet note that lingers even after the song has ended. Ahead, at the edge of the garden where roots give way to open earth, there is a final alcove. It is simple. A low stool made from driftwood. A clay cup turned upside down. A small reed mat, just large enough for one person to sit, or to sleep, or to become still. This, he tells you without words, is where the whisper becomes your own. Use it. You turn the cup upright, and beneath it lies a piece of folded parchment. You unfold it slowly. There's no ink, no characters, just the faint imprint of a thumb pressed once into its center like someone long ago wanted you to know I was here. And he will be too. You turn the cup once more. It catches a droplet from the sky. Just one. Enough. Yoruba cosmology often speaks of the journey home as not a road to be walked, but a memory to be softened back into. The ancestors don't wait on mountaintops. They lean against trees. They hide in the warmth of stew. They ride in laughter and land in dreams. Tonight, you feel all of that. You sip the sky from your clay cup. It tastes like all the times you almost remembered something important and then let it go, like a feather to light to hold. Beside you, the garden begins to blur. Not vanish. Just unhook itself from need. The moss closes its eyes. The bulls settle into their breath. Even the foxes no longer stir. And you? You finally place both hands on the ground. Not to anchor yourself, but to say thank you. There is a Yoruba story rarely told, whispered only among elders who keep one foot in the spirit world, that speaks of the soul as a Calabash bowl filled with water. Each life is a ripple. Each love, a drop of honey. Each sorrow, a dash of bitter root. And when the bowl is full, not overflowing, just hold the Orisha of silence, known only by the sound he doesn't make, lifts it, tilts it skyward, and drinks. He does not speak. He does not bless. He just remembers you. You do not know if you are full yet, but you feel full enough for now. And the Orisha, wherever he lingers, hums a quiet note of recognition. The herbalist finally kneels across from you. He does not hand you anything. He does not touch you. He only asks, what name will you answer to next? You do not reply. There is no need. The mist carries the shape of your smile, and that is enough. The garden begins to open not outward, but inward. You feel your edges becoming softer, like clouds worn from prayer, like stone weathered by kindness. One final Calabash bowl is placed beside you, empty, waiting, but not for you to fill. For someone else one day who will find their way here and need a place to lay their breath. You rest your hand on its rim. You say nothing, but your pulse answers. Then you rise and walk. Not away, just forward. The night folds with you like a story written backward to reveal its truth. And the stars, those patient watchers, blink once more. Not in farewell, but in reverence. You pass through the final arch of bamboo. Your shoulders no longer carry. Your name no longer clings. You are light. You are here. You are remembered. You walked many lifetimes tonight. Some were familiar. Some you glimpsed only for a moment, like the glint of a fish beneath a quiet river, or the rustle of cloth behind a half-Midas-trimmed ancestor. You sipped from cups meant for memory, for forgetting, for softening. You've placed your breath into Calabash bowls and watched them shimmer without sound. And now the garden has quieted. The stones are no longer steps. They are places to rest. The whispers that once beckoned you forward now swirl in the air like gentle lullabies, no longer asking, only allowing. You've seen what waits beneath the moss. You've touched the rim of a bowl once meant for someone else. And most of all, you've remembered without remembering why the Orishas never write down their instructions, why they speak in sentence, sound, and pause. Because some truths are meant only to be felt just once, just right, just here. So let your breath slow. Let the thought you've been carrying drop gently from your hand and dissolve like a petal into warm tea. Let the echo of the fox steps follow you only as far as your next dream. And if you find yourself, tomorrow, standing still in the middle of your day, for no reason at all, no sound, no task, know that part of you has remembered the calabash, the garden, the bull. That is enough. You are enough. Sleep now, traveler of gentle truths. You've done what few remember to do. You've listened. You've rested. You've returned. Sweet dreams.